Chapter 26-21. The decisions of the empires. As Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lai Yanwuji retreated in defeat, the elite forces they had brought from their three organizations suffered heavy losses as well. They retreated under the attacks of the Four Symbols Alliance, and in just a short moment, several primordial realm experts fell. The Four Symbols Alliance had launched an all-out offense. They used all the forces of the alliance without holding back at all. It was not just godhood elites and primordial realm experts. Even origin realm and sainthood cultivators took part in the battle. Even though they were weak, they could unleash power beyond their cultivation when they fell into formations together. As a result, the cultivators that surged out of the Four Symbols Alliance were like a flood. There were so many of them that there were at least 2 or 3 million. On the other hand, the Righteous Alliance had never expected experts to come from the desolate plain, so they had only brought their elites to minimize their casualties. They were all at godhood at the very least. They only had around 200,000 people across the three organizations, so they were obviously at a numerical disadvantage. They did not even have as many godhood cultivators or primordial realm experts as the Four Symbols Alliance. If the martial soul lineage had not been pinned down, they would have had more than enough power to deal with the Four Symbols Alliance. However, the martial soul lineage was already struggling to deal with their own predicament, so they were unable to provide any assistance at all. Ever since the betrayal, the Righteous Alliance's strength had plummeted. It was impossible for them to be the Four Symbols Alliance's opponent. Great Elder! At this moment, a sorrowful cry rang out. The head of a chaotic prime Great Elder from the Righteous Alliance had exploded from a punch. His soul failed to escape, so he directly died there. 2 chaotic primes from the Four Symbols Alliance had killed him. They worked together to successfully kill someone during this period of time. At the same time, Lai Yanwuji roared furiously as he retreated. His voice was filled with grief. The chaotic prime who had died was a Great Elder of the Fire God clan. Losing such an expert was a heavy loss to any peak organization on the Cloud Plane. No one hold back. Use your full strength. Kill them all, an old voice boomed out. It was filled with evident fury and killing intent. A chaotic prime Great Elder from the Four Symbols Alliance called out. His eyes were bloodshot as gave this ruthless command. During the past few days, the Four Symbols Alliance could only hide in their protective formation and wait for their deaths under the combined efforts of the Righteous Alliance and the martial soul lineage. They could not afford to take a single step out, as leaving meant death. As a result, the entire Four Symbols Alliance was extremely vexed. They felt aggrieved and were filled with the fear towards death. Now that the tides had turned, and they finally saw a glimmer of hope in the darkness of death, all of them valued this opportunity very much. They all used their full strength to rapidly enlarge this glimmer of hope that they had obtained after so much difficulty. In contrast to the Four Symbols Alliance, which basically unleashed 120% of their strength, the Righteous Alliance's morale was low. They fought as they fled, and their casualties rapidly increased. Haha, She-Emperor, it looks like the situation of your Righteous Alliance has taken a turn for the worse. The Righteous Alliance has begun running. They're not the Four Symbols Alliance's opponent. In the Imperial Palace of the Blood Sun Empire, the Blood Emperor was overjoyed. He was extremely happy. He had almost begun dancing in joy. The Righteous Alliance seems to have lost a chaotic prime. The battle is just too intense. It's basically the final battle to the death between the two alliances. She-Emperor, it's best if you take part in something like this. The Blood Emperor acted like he was trying to persuade the She-Emperor, but he was actually scoffing at him. The She-Emperor said nothing. He took a step and immediately vanished, leaving the Blood Sun Empire. He used his speed as a chaotic prime to cross through the southern region and quickly returned to the Shi Empire. The 2 other chaotic primes of the Shi Empire, Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming, had already emerged from seclusion. They gathered together sternly. The Shi Emperor directly appeared before the 2 of them. He was stern as well. Ziyun, you're the Emperor of the Shi Empire. What do you think we should do about this? Shi Haoshuan asked sternly. Not only was he the ancestral emperor and ancestor of the Shi Empire, but he was also the Shi Emperor's father. Sound the war drums. Gather all the experts of the Xi Empire and ready all armies for war. Immediately summon experts from all the organizations and sects in the Xi Empire to gather in the imperial capital. Immediately summon experts from all the ancient empires, divine kingdoms, and so on in the northern region to gather in the imperial capital. As soon as the Xi Emperor returned, he passed down order after order as the Emperor of the Xi Empire. Every single order was an imperial edict and was carried out as quickly as possible. Not only did it reach the organizations of various sizes in the Xi Empire, but even the independent ancient empires had received the Xi Emperor's edict. Immediately, the entire northern region was shaken up. The Xi Emperor used his actions to show his decision. He planned on gathering the power of the entire northern region to fight alongside the Righteous Alliance. At this moment, the current emperor of the Zhao Empire in the eastern region passed down the same orders as the Xi Emperor. The entire eastern region immediately began to surge. The three chaotic primes of the Zhao Empire all emerged from seclusion. They were extremely stern as they said with authority, "At a time like this, we cannot retreat. We can only face everything courageously and assist the Righteous Alliance against the Four Symbols Alliance. After all, if the Righteous Alliance is defeated or destroyed, our Zhao Empire will face a terrible fate. Our Zhao Empire will rise and fall with the Righteous Alliance." The two ancestral emperors stood atop the imperial palace of the Jinjian Empire. They stared at the southern region deeply. "Ancestral emperors, do we mobilize our experts to provide support?" The emperor of the Jinjian Empire stood politely beside the ancestral emperors and asked carefully. "There's no need to hurry. The Righteous Alliance is at an inferior position right now. If no accidents happen, they will definitely suffer defeat. The martial soul lineage has encountered powerful opponents, and they're already struggling with their own predicament. As such, the distribution of power on the cloud plane will probably undergo an upheaving change. If we take the wrong side, what awaits us is destruction. We should just observe and not take any actions just yet. We should make our decision at the final moment," an ancestral emperor of the Jinjian Empire said sternly. Chapter 26-22. Assaulting the Martial Soul Mountain. It was also at this moment that the everlasting empires in the eastern, northern, and western regions made their decisions simultaneously. As powerful emperors that reigned over an entire region, their decisions could affect all the organizations in their respective region. Among the three regions, the Xi Empire and the Zhao Empire had already mobilized, gathering their forces against the Four Symbols Alliances. The Jinjian Empire chose a different route from the eastern and northern regions. As a member of the Righteous Alliance, they chose to remain quiet instead. They did nothing. In outer space, the sun condensed from Su Jiping's laws of the sun radiated with dazzling light and terrifying heat. Its effects on the cloud plane rapidly weakened. This was because their battle location in outer space constantly shifted as they constantly moved away from the cloud plane. After reaching a certain point, the influence from the laws of the sun on the cloud plane would decrease. Su Jiping currently sat within the huge sun as he stared at the mountain soul. As time went on, he gradually frowned. Just how much energy is in the Martial Soul Mountain? It is under the constant attack of my laws of the sun, but its energy hasn't decreased much at all, thought Su Jiping. After a moment of thought, he looked at Gong Sun Ji, who was being led around like a dog by Yu Chao. He called out, "Leader, don't waste any more time with him. The difference between your cultivations is far too great. If he doesn't want to fight with you, you can't catch up to him. I've already trapped the Martial Soul Mountain, so hurry up and come over to attack the Martial Soul Mountain with your protector sword." The Martial Soul Mountain definitely won't be able to last much longer given the might of the protector sword. When he heard Su Jiping's words, Gong Sun Ji's eyes suddenly lit up as he hunted Yu Chao down. He immediately abandoned Yu Chao and flew towards the Martial Soul Mountain. Yu Chao hovered in the distance. As he watched Gong Sun Ji fly towards the Martial Soul Mountain, he immediately guessed Gong Sun Ji's intentions. His expression suddenly changed. Oh no, he's trying to attack the mountain soul. The protector sword poses a much greater threat than both Su Jiping and Sha Yun. The mountain soul probably won't be able to last very long. Yu Chao's heart sank. He immediately pursued Gong Sun Ji in an attempt to stop him from approaching the mountain soul. "Huh, Yu Chao, weren't you pretty good at running before? You didn't even want to make contact with me. Now that I'm about to attack the martial soul mountain, you've finally begun to panic. However, it's useless even if you panic now. Once I destroy your martial soul mountain and disrupt your so-called martial soul array, your martial soul lineage will become lambs for slaughter in my hands." Gong Sun Ji laughed aloud. He ignored Yu Chao's frantic attacks. He guarded himself with the impenetrable power of the protector sword as he approached the martial soul mountain with lightning speed. Yu Chao's expression was ugly. He launched several attacks, but he failed to harm Gong Sun Ji, who was protected by the power of the protector sword. As a ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime of the martial soul lineage, there was nothing he could do to Gong Sun Ji. So what if you have a protector sword? You're still just a god king. Yu Chao snorted coldly. Suddenly he struck out again. Terrifying energy surged in the space there as he directly threw a punch at the space in front of Gong Sun Ji. Immediately, the space there collapsed, forming a huge crack right in front of Gong Sun Ji. Gong Sun Ji's expression changed slightly. He immediately stopped and stared at the crack through the light around him. When he saw the temporal vortices in the crack, he could not help but become slightly afraid. Those temporal vortices are the most terrifying objects in spatial cracks. It's said that millions or even billions of years can pass in an instant once someone falls into them, or maybe time can regress by millions of years. Let alone millions of years, would I still exist in this world after regressing 100,000 years? Gong Sun Ji's heart shivered as he stared at the temporal vortices. 100,000 years ago, he was not even born yet. Without any hesitation, Gong Sun Ji immediately retreated. He pulled far away from the spatial crack to stop himself from falling in. However, Yu Chao clearly wanted to trap Gong Sun Ji like this. He constantly threw his fists in the distance. Every punch would fly over with astonishing power, smashing through space and constantly creating spatial cracks around Gong Sun Ji. At that moment, Gong Sun Ji was stuck. He felt an instinctual fear towards the temporal vortices that wreaked havoc in the spatial cracks. He dared not set his foot in there. This was because he had no confidence that his protector sword could fend off the power of the temporal vortices. At this moment, a cold snort rang out. A streak of light shot towards the martial soul mountain. It was extremely bright, illuminating the surroundings and directly landing on Yu Chao. Immediately, Yu Chao let out a grunt and was sent flying. His chest had been penetrated, leaving behind a bowl-sized hole. At the same time, a bright light condensed from the laws of the sun reached Gong Sun Ji's feet. It flickered with golden light as the golden solar flames burned on it. "Leader, step onto it. I'll guide you over." Su Zhiping's voice rang out in Gong Sun Ji's head. Gong Sun Ji hesitated slightly as he looked at the surging solar flames on the golden bridge. He glanced at the protector sword in his hand before gritting his teeth in the end and setting foot on there. The golden bridge began to shrink. As Gong Sun Ji stood on it, he rapidly approached the mountain soul. During this time, Han Zong tried interfering to prevent Gong Sun Ji from approaching the martial soul mountain, but he was firmly pinned down by Huang Fugi. He could not break free. In the end, Gong Sun Ji arrived before the martial soul mountain very soon under the guidance of Su Zhiping. He directly entered the colossal sun condensed from the laws of the sun. "Quick, attack the martial soul mountain with your full power," Su Zhiping said sternly as he stood beside Gong Sun Ji. Gong Sun Ji nodded. He looked at the mountain soul that hovered before him, and he experienced joy from the bottom of his heart. In the past, let alone standing before the martial soul mountain, even just catching a glance of the mountain soul was a wild thought for him, as he did not possess that right even as the lord of a peak. As for all the successors of the martial soul lineage, they were undefeatable existences in his eyes. In particular, Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao stood like insurmountable mountains. However, not only was he standing so close to the martial soul mountain now, but he would even personally destroy it. Gong Sun Ji struggled to remain calm over such a difference between his past and the present. From today onwards, The martial soul lineage will cease to be our radiant Saint Hall's greatest enemy because they will no longer possess that right, Gong Sun Ji said slowly. He raised the protector sword high up and directly swung it at the mountain soul with astonishing power. Boom! With a deafening rumble, the strike from Godslayer's sword completely exceeded Su Jiping's previous attempts. It struck the mountain soul with a terrifying blow, immediately causing the protective barrier of light to tremble and flicker. Even the entire mountain soul shook from the attack. So powerful! That strike has already reached the 5th heavenly layer. It might even be at the 6th heavenly layer. Su Jiping was secretly astonished. The might of Godslayer's sword shocked him. And that's only because Gong Sun Ji's personal cultivation is insufficient. If he possessed Xianzhan's strength, the protector sword would be even more terrifying in his hands. He might even be able to destroy the screen of light with a single strike, thought Su Jiping. His desire for a protector sword became stronger. Even if he could not use the protector sword, he could let his clansmen control it. Once that happened, his Su family would gain great renown across the saints' world. Sha Yun, stop your attacks. Work with me to keep the martial soul mountain trapped so that they don't run away. Leave the rest to the leader, said Su Jiping. All right, you two keep the martial soul mountain trapped and leave the rest up to me. Gong Sun Ji was brimming with courage as he continued his assault on the mountain soul. Chapter 26-23. The power of 8 deafening booms constantly rang out in outer space. Terrifying sound waves and devastating shock waves swept through the area, reducing the space there to shards. Gong Sun Ji shone brightly as he wielded Godslayer's sword. He launched relentless attacks at the mountain soul. Whenever he swung down, the might created would be enough to cleave worlds into two. Space would shatter. His power was extremely astonishing. On the other hand, the mountain soul seemed like it had sunken into quicksand under the restraints from Su Jiping and Sha Yun. It moved in an extremely sluggish manner, so it was unable to avoid Gong Sun Ji's attacks. As a result, the mountain soul could only depend on its sturdy barrier to block Gong Sun Ji's violent attacks. The mountain soul can't last much longer. The protector swords from the Radiant Saint Hall are too powerful, Chu Jian said sternly from inside the martial soul array on the martial soul mountain. He was extremely solemn. The danger that their martial soul lineage faced this time was much greater than what they experienced back on the desolate plain. This was all because of the protector swords from the Radiant Saint Hall. The protector swords were just too powerful, with Godslayer's sword in particular. Gong Sun Ji clearly could not unleash its full power, but the might of the attacks were no weaker than the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliances. A figure shot over with lightning speed. He moved extremely quickly as he headed directly towards the mountain soul. He was Yu Chao. Originally, he was responsible for keeping Gong Sun Ji busy. Now that Gong Sun Ji was set on attacking the martial soul mountain, he had been freed up as well. He could only return to the mountain soul. Su Jiping and Sha Yun naturally discovered Yu Chao's approach. A cold light flickered through Sha Yun's eyes immediately. He was about to deal with Yu Chao. Don't pay attention to him. Concentrating your power on keeping the martial soul mountain trapped is the priority. Once we scatter our power, it's extremely likely for them to flee with a secret technique. Once they really do escape, there will be endless future problems, Su Jiping said sternly. With that, Sha Yun immediately held back his urge to attack. He sniggered and said, "Fair enough. It's extremely likely that Yu Chao is purposefully trying to pass through our seal despite all the risk just to lure us into attacking him. We're currently doing all that we can to keep the martial soul mountain trapped. If we really do scatter some of our power, even if it's just a tiny sliver, it's extremely likely for the martial soul lineage to escape." Yu Chao returned to the mountain soul successfully. He appeared before Jian Chen and the others immediately. Currently, Yu Chao was pale-faced and covered with blood. In particular, a bowl-sized hole in his chest stood out. The flesh around the wound had been charred by Su Jiping's laws of the sun. "Third senior brother, how are you?" The faces of everyone in the martial soul array hardened as they asked in concern when they noticed Yu Chao's wound. "Third senior brother, were you injured by Su Jiping?" Jian Chen looked at Yu Chao's wound, and his face became rather sunken. He could clearly sense extremely pure lingering traces of the laws of the sun. With the lingering traces of the laws, Yu Chao was unable to recover. His condition would even constantly worsen, so his wounds that were not particularly severe in the beginning would become worse and worse. It's no problem. Our priority is dealing with the danger that we face right now. Come, let's form the martial soul array with 7 people. Let's see how much first senior brother's strength will increase once we combine all our strength. It'll be up to first senior brother to stop them now. Yu Chao ignored his wounds. As soon as he arrived, he immediately joined them in the martial soul array. With his addition, the martial soul array immediately became much more powerful. It was far, far more powerful than back on the desolate plain. In the distance, Han Zhang's face lightened up as he battled Huang Fugi. With Yu Chao's addition, he immediately felt his strength rapidly increase. Suddenly, he bellowed out, and his presence surged out like a flood. He directly threw a punch. He had clearly used some sort of powerful secret technique with the punch. The fist crushed the space there. With astonishing power, it directly colliding with a spear that Huang Fugi had condensed from the laws of slaughter. Boom! With a great rumble, the spear actually cracked when it collided with Han Zhang's fist, dispersing into the surroundings as fragments of laws. Han Zhang's fist continued onwards without slowing down, hurtling towards Huang Fugi's face like it was unstoppable. Wherever it passed, space would crumple like paper. Huang Fugi's expression hardened. However, he was wearing a set of God artifact armor, so he was fearless. The power of slaughter permeated his surroundings, making him seem like a god of war with an iron heart. Laws condensed on his hands as terrifying energy surged as he directly struck out with lightning speed. The punch and palm strike collided like worlds. The tremendous explosion and shockwave seemed to split the universe into 2. The sea of stars in the surroundings vanished as the entire region of space descended into chaos. Huang Fugi's expression immediately changed. He was pushed back uncontrollably by the violent storm of energy as his face became flushed. With his cultivation as a peak 4th heavenly layer Grand Prime and the laws of slaughter he had comprehended, he had still been knocked back by a single punch from Han Zhang. This is power that is almost on par with the 5th heavenly layer. Huang Fugi was stern. He was still able to match Han Zhang before, but now, he had been forced into an inferior position by Han Zhang's new strength. Moreover, to his terror, Han Zhang's strength was not the only thing that had grown. Even his martial soul force had become greater. At this moment, the protective barrier on the mountain soul shook unsteadily under the attacks of the protector sword. The entire mountain soul shook violently. It was on the verge of collapse. The mountain soul can't last much longer, thought Han Zhang. Due to the martial soul array, he completely understood the situation of the mountain soul. Once the mountain soul fell, the martial soul array would be disrupted, and the consequences would be unthinkable. As a result, he did not spend too much time dealing with Huang Fugi. He immediately rushed back to the mountain soul. Han Zhang, our battle still hasn't ended yet. Huang Fugi immediately blocked Han Zhang's way. The laws flared around him. Clearly, he was ready to use his full strength to pin down Han Zhang and prevent him from providing any assistance. Huang Fugi, you are the one seeking death. Han Zhang's voice was frigid. In the next moment, surging martial soul force suddenly shot out of his forehead as an invisible sword, crossing through space and directly slashing at Huang Fugi. At this urgent moment, Han Zhang could no longer care about the expenditure of the power of his soul. He directly used the heaven-severing technique. Even Huang Fugi, a peak 4th heavenly layer Grand Prime, was unable to defend himself before martial soul force. The heaven-severing technique passed through all of his defenses and landed firmly on his soul. Huang Fugi let out a grunt. The heaven-severing technique was just too powerful. His soul began to collapse after taking on the attack, where the splitting pain immediately turned him sheet white. However, Han Zhang had used up half of the power of his soul after using the heaven-severing technique. It was not just him either. Even Chu Jian, Yu Chao, Yun Ziding, Su Qi, Bai Ruffing, Qing Shan, and Jian Chen had all lost half of the power of their souls as they maintained the martial soul array. Chapter 26-24. Hunzong heavily injured after using the heaven-severing strike, Hunzong became rather pale. He seemed slightly haggard. No one would be well off if they expended half the power of their soul in an instant. However, this price came with an extremely astonishing effect. Having received the heaven-severing strike, Huang Fugi was now clutching his head in pain as he rapidly retreated while grunting in agony. His face had become sheet-white. 2 streaks of blood ran down from his eyes. His sheet-white face and the 2 horrifying streaks of blood created quite a chilling sight. At that moment, Huang Fugi had been completely incapacitated. The heavy injuries to his soul had temporarily cut off all his senses from the outside world. Hunzong glanced past Huang Fugi coldly while feeling a tinge of pity in his heart. This was because killing Huang Fugi was a piece of cake in his current state. However, it would take a little more time. The Mountain Soul's defenses were currently facing the danger of collapsing, and once that happened, the martial soul array would definitely be disrupted by Su Zhiping and the others. He did not have the time to kill Huang Fugi at all. Swish! With a single movement, Hunzong vanished. He hurried towards the Mountain Soul as quickly as he could. Boom! 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 The rumbles near the Mountain Soul never stopped. Instead, they clearly became more and more hurried and more frequent. Gong Sun Ji wielded Godslayer's sword like he had endless power, swinging it at the Mountain Soul as hard as he could. He moved faster and faster. The Mountain Soul shook violently as the barrier of light trembled greatly. It was showing signs of cracking. The Mountain Soul clearly could not last much longer. The Martial Soul Mountain is almost giving way. Leader, quickly! Su Zhiping called out as he continued to keep the Mountain Soul trapped with the laws of the sun. However, there was no joy on his face at all. Instead, he had become extremely stern, and his voice had become rather frantic as well. He had been constantly paying attention to the battle between Huang Fugi and Hunzong. He clearly saw Huang Fugi getting heavily injured, so he became filled with fear, or even dread, towards the heaven-severing technique of the martial soul lineage. He possessed similar strength to Huang Fugi. Since even Huang Fugi had suffered such a horrible fate, it was impossible for him to end up any better if he were struck by the same secret technique. As a result, he could not help but panic slightly when he sensed Hunzong hurrying over. He had completely offended the martial soul lineage today. Once the martial soul lineage escaped, his Su family would be the target of the martial soul lineage's endless vengeance. That would definitely be a disaster for the Su family. To the other side, Gong Sun Ji had also learnt from Su Zhiping that Hunzong was hurrying over. After a moment of hesitation, craziness immediately filled his eyes. He suddenly cut open his hands and allowed his blood to spray onto Godslayer's sword. Immediately, Godslayer's sword shook gently. It produced a deep thrum as if the slumbering sword spirit had begun to awaken under the stimulation of Gong Sun Ji's blood. At the same time, a devastating power even greater than before erupted from Godslayer's sword. The terrifying energy surged out, sculpting an extremely blurry figure. Godslayer's sword seemed to gain a certain sense of charm with the appearance of the blurry figure such that the sword became something living. At the same time, Su Zhiping's eyes narrowed. He stared right at the blurry figure drawn from the surging energy on the protector sword, and a wondrous light appeared in his eyes. I can actually sense the sliver of a presence that belongs to something living from the sword. It looks like these protector swords aren't as simple as I imagine them to be. Su Zhiping was secretly surprised. However, due to his own limited power, Gong Sun Ji failed to notice this at all. He bellowed out at the sky and clutched the hilt with both hands. Energy surged around him as he swung the sword at the Mountain Soul again after being strengthened. With a boom, the defensive barrier around the Mountain Soul sunk in with the slash. Where Godslayer's sword had struck, the surroundings of the barrier constantly creaked as cracks appeared. Very soon, the power of the slash ran out. It had almost shattered the defenses of the Mountain Soul. Haha, martial soul lineage, I would like to see how you handle my next attack. Gong Sun Ji laughed aloud. Through Godslayer's sword, he knew that the defenses of the martial soul mountain had reached its limits already. Without any hesitation, madness flared up in his eyes, and he lifted the sword high above his head again. His hands trembled as he held the sword. His essence blood constantly poured out from the wounds on his hands. He allowed the hilt to absorb the blood in exchange for even greater power. Godslayer's sword would exhaust quite a lot of Gongsun Ji's essence blood with every such attack. This was equivalent to throwing his life on his line, using his own life to fight. Gongsun Ji could not deal many attacks like that with his current strength. As Gongsun Ji slashed out, the blurry figure appeared once again on the sword. It was connected to Godslayer's sword such that they seemed to be perfectly fused and inseparable. It was the sword, and the sword was it. However, it was just too blurry. Only a rough silhouette was visible. Whether it be the facial features or the limbs, none of them were clear. It was very easy to confuse it with a chaotic ball of energy. Gongsun Ji trembled even more. His face had also paled. He had lost a third of his essence blood, quite a great loss to his vitality. However, his face was filled with madness and excitement. He clenched the sword and suddenly swung down, erupting with devastating power that could split the galaxies. The sword fell directly towards the mountain soul like a sword of judgment. Arg! At the same time, Hunzong bellowed out furiously. His presence became astonishing as he charged right towards Godslayer's sword. In an instant he arrived before Godslayer's sword. All of his energy immediately surged out, forming a huge shield in front of the sword. Behind him was the mountain soul. In its current state, it definitely could not endure the attack. Boom! With a great rumble, the shield condensed with all the power that Hunzong possessed crumbled like paper before Godslayer's sword. The sword continued onwards without stopping, directly passing through Hunzang's body. Hunzong had been cut into two along his chest. Even his medium-quality god artifact armor had been split in half. At the same time, the expressions of the 7 people who maintained the martial soul array all changed. Blood sprayed from their mouths. They were connected to Hunzong through the martial soul array. As Hunzong was heavily injured, they were affected as well. First, senior brother. Su Qi cried out as she paled in fright. The expressions of Chu Jian, Yu Chao, Yun Ziding, Bai Ruffing, and Qin Shan had changed drastically as well. Boom! At the same time, a deafening rumble rang out. The sword landed on the mountain soul with a resplendent glow, and the defenses finally caved in, shattering under the strike. Jian Chen and the others who currently stood within the martial soul array were directly exposed before Gongsun Ji, Su Zhiping, and Sha Yun. Chapter 26-25. The rain in outer space having lost the protective barrier of light around the mountain soul, the 7 people who stood in the martial soul array were immediately thrown into the middle of danger. They could not afford any interference to the martial soul array, as all of their power and vital energies were concentrated on Hunzong. As a result, they could not use their own power at all unless they stopped the martial soul array. However, once they stopped the martial soul array, they would have nothing to use against Sha Yun and Su Zhiping. However, even though they were basically doomed, the 7 successors of the martial soul lineage showed no despair at all. It was as if the danger they currently faced could not really threaten their lives. Ah, I've finally shattered the shell that has been protecting you. Without the shell, you are all just ants putting a last, desperate struggle in my eyes. Today, the legend of the martial soul lineage will end in my hands. I will destroy the greatest enemies of the Radiant Saint Hall. I will be the greatest contributor to the Radiant Saint Hall across its countless years by destroying you. I will complete the wish that the past leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall failed to fulfill. At the same time, I will avenge all the hallowed Saint Masters that have died to your hands during all these years. Gongsun Ji held Godslayer's sword. Even though Godslayer's sword had sapped his vitality after absorbing his essence blood twice, he paid no attention to his personal feebleness. He viciously stared at the 7 successors of the martial soul lineage who were waiting for their deaths as he became extremely excited. I, Gongsun Ji, am destined to become the greatest leader of the Radiant Saint Hall over its countless years in the future. The Radiant Saint Hall will definitely shine resplendently in my hands. Gongsun Ji laughed aloud. His laughter was filled with arrogance and haughtiness. The martial soul lineage renowned across the saints' world was about to be destroyed under his lead. This made Gong Sunji gain an even better recognition of just how astonishing the power he now possessed was. This made his confidence swell to the point where he felt invincible. Most importantly, he was about to take back the method of the exalted saint. Once he obtained the method of the exalted saint, Gong Sunji was confident that he would become a supreme figure who stood at the apex of the saints' world. "We can only use our final move," said Chu Jian sternly on the mountain soul as he stared at Gong Sunji, who was laughing wildly. His voice rang out in the heads of the other successors. All of them became stern. Jian Chen's heart sank as well. Naturally, he knew what this so-called final move was referring to. This final move was the final life-saving trump card of the martial soul lineage. The move would cause all of the mountain soul's energy to explode. During the devastating explosion, everyone would lose their bodies and everything they possessed on them, space rings, armor, and so on. Only their souls would survive in the end. A mysterious power would protect their souls during the explosion and send their souls back to the true martial soul mountain. As a result, their souls would not be destroyed. As long as their souls remained intact, they would not die. They would just need some time to rebuild their bodies, and then they would be able to return to their previous state. Now that they had reached the end of the road, perhaps this was the only choice they could make. "Seniors, the price to use that move is far too great. However, I do have a trump card that might be able to deal with our current predicament," said Jian Qin. He could not afford to leave because he was not alone. He still had many acquaintances and family on the Cloud Plain. If they really used the final move, the Tianyuan clan would definitely be destroyed. With that, an extremely astonishing sword qi began to radiate from his body. At the same time, his eyes lost their original colors. Two piercing lights began to shine. One of his eyes had become a dazzling violet, while the other had become a deep azure. The two eyes flickered with azure and violet light. At that moment, Jian Chen seemed quite demonic. This was the power of the twin swords. Jian Chen had already called out the sword spirits and was preparing to fuse the swords. He had already reached the end of the road now. Even if he had to expose his identity, he would still do it. Just as Jian Chen was about to fuse the twin swords, the heartless child slowly stood up on the roof of a structure in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. His eyes pierced through the space there and directly landed on the mountain soul's location. "The fate of the martial soul lineage has nothing to do with me, but Jian Qin is someone crucial. He can't die here. It looks like it's time for me to take action," the heartless child murmured as if he had not had enough fun yet. It was like from the beginning till the end, the entire battle had been a play or an interesting performance to him. Now that the performance was about to end, he felt a slight sense of pity. "Hunzong is the strongest member of the martial soul lineage. I'll start with him, and then I'll slowly deal with the rest of you." Gong Sunji chuckled. His eyes locked onto the bisected Hunzong, and he raised Godslayer's sword high above his head. He was about to slash it at Hunzong without any hesitation. "Stop! First, senior brother!" Cries rang out from the mountain soul. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Killing intent surged in Jian Chen's eyes as he immediately urged on the fusion of the twin swords. At the same time, in the southern region of the Cloud Plain, the heartless child slowly raised his hand. He pointed at where Gong Sunji stood, and just when he was about to take action, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He was surprised and he muttered, "Why has she come?" With that, a huge crack silently appeared in the space before Gong Sunji. The crack seemed to split the world apart. As a result, Gong Sunji and Hunzong now seemed to stand in different worlds. In the end, Godslayer's sword struck the spatial crack with surging power. It caused quite a great shockwave in the spatial crack, but Hunzong was fine. The laws of space. Who is it? Su Zhiping and Sha Yun's expression changed as they kept the mountain soul restrained. They both called out. The two of them just happened to be afraid of any unexpected incidents happening as they destroyed the martial soul lineage. Now that the spatial crack had appeared, their hearts tightened. Suddenly, Su Zhiping and Sha Yun both wiped their faces. They looked at the water on their hands that came from unknown origins as they were both left at a loss. What? No, this is rain. Where did this rain come from? Su Zhiping was surprised. He was currently in outer space, so why would rain appear? It's raining. At the same time, Gong Sunji could not afford to pay attention to what the spatial crack was all about. Instead, he raised his head to look at the disorienting outer space. He was stunned. He could clearly see a great swathe of rain appear out of nowhere, and it actually fell onto his head from the empty space. It doused the region of space. The strange part was that there was clearly no force of attraction, no gravity, in space. Everything floated about, but the rain had truly fallen down from the sky above him. In an instant, it became torrential. There were also flashes of lightning and booming thunder. Gray clouds shrouded the area above him. Chapter 26:26. A turnaround. Gong Sunji became slightly lost. As he looked at the pouring rain that fell down from outer space, he became both surprised and doubtful. He actually temporarily forgot about Han Zong, who was beside him. Su Zhiping and Sha Yun were both extremely stern. They realized that their worries had finally come true. In the end, something that they did not wish to see still happened when they tried to destroy the martial soul lineage. With their cultivation, it was impossible for them to not understand that the sudden rain had come from a mysterious expert, a supreme expert that they had failed to sense the arrival of. Soon afterwards, the powerful senses of Sha Yun and Su Zhiping's souls erupted from their bodies. Like a great blood, they surged out in all directions in an attempt to find the hidden, mysterious expert. However, their expressions changed again very soon. They immediately became extremely stern. The two of them had actually discovered a mysterious and great power that blocked the senses of their souls, preventing their senses from passing through. "Oh no, we've been trapped," Su Zhiping called out. His face became extremely ugly as he looked at the surroundings with a sunken face. However, the stars had already vanished from where he looked. A thick layer of gray clouds surrounded them as a great prison. The thing that blocked the senses of their souls was the gray cloud. However, Su Zhiping and Sha Yun would never believe that this was just a gray cloud, as the clouds hid energy terrifying enough to make them shiver. "This is a formation. We've been trapped in a formation." Sha Yun's face was sunken. He was the ancestor of a peak sect from the Desolate Plain, a famed expert on the Desolate Plain. Now that he had been trapped in a formation unknowingly, he felt extremely furious. "Let's not worry about that for now. Destroy the martial soul lineage first," Su Zhiping called out. He had already fallen out with the martial soul lineage completely. If the lineage continued to exist, he would be left forever restless in the future. Although he was not afraid of the martial soul lineage's retaliation, his Su family was a big deal. The clan could not endure the martial soul lineage's revenge. Sha Yun had also realized the severity of the matter. Although he had no idea why this mysterious expert had suddenly cast down a formation to trap them, their priority was clearly to eliminate the martial soul lineage completely. With that, Sha Yun no longer hesitated. His blade jolted, and he immediately shot out a strand of blade chi. He had only swung out casually, but the brutal blade chi split into 8 and shoot towards the 8 successors of the martial soul lineage. Even though Sha Yun's attack was nowhere near as powerful as Gong Sunji's Godslayer's sword, the 8 strands of blade chi seemed to possess their own intelligence. They all locked onto their target's presence, preventing them from escaping. It was unlike Gong Sunji attacks, which could not even hit the shadow of his target. Su Zhiping paid close attention to Sha Yun's 8 strands of sword chi as well. He had to devote all his power onto keeping the mountain soul trapped just in case they wanted to flee. As such, there was nothing that he could do. Wiping out the martial soul lineage would all depend on this. I hope the mysterious expert who cast down this formation has nothing to do with the martial soul lineage, or, Su Zhiping thought. As he watched the blade chi rapidly draw nearer, he became utterly nervous. Suddenly, a shocking bolt of lightning exploded in the space there and lit up the surroundings. Huge chains of lightning danced around like dragons of light in the thick clouds, leading to a resplendent flash. They immediately struck Sha Yun's 8 strands of blade qi with indescribable speed, producing heavy booms. Sha Yun's powerful blade qi immediately shattered under the lightning, dispersing into the surroundings. At the same time, the surging energy from the blade qi was completely absorbed by the formation. Having personally witnessed this, Su Zhiping's heart immediately skipped a beat. His expression became extremely ugly. His greatest worry had ended up becoming a reality. The mysterious expert seemed to have come because of the martial soul lineage. At the same time, the members of the martial soul lineage, who were about to use their final move to flee, all raised their heads. All of them were stern and slightly puzzled. Isn't this? At the same time, Jian Chen forcefully stopped the fusion of the twin swords. He stared at the torrential rain and rolling clouds with interest as he felt extremely surprised. He had already recognized the formation, and he knew who had cast it down. "May I ask who you are? Please show yourself." Su Zhiping called out. A blurry figure suddenly appeared in the rain. The power of clouds and rain surrounded the figure, completely obscuring their appearance. All that was visible was an extremely blurry silhouette. It was even impossible to distinguish their gender. The person just hovered in the heavy rain like this. It was as if they had fused with the rain, and it was also as if they had fused with space. Their presence could not be sensed at all. Su Zhiping and Sha Yun's eyes narrowed. They both stared at the blurry figure as they became solemn. As Grand Primes, they were able to sense and perceive everything with greater clarity. The two of them gained the false impression that the blurry figure was the ruler of the world, someone who could influence the law and order of the surroundings. Suddenly, Su Zhiping's heart leapt. He growled and said, "I know who you are. You are the Rain Abbess of the Cloud's Urge Empire from the Delight Plane." "What? She's actually the Rain Abbess of the Delight Plane?" Sha Yun was surprised by that. He had heard quite a lot of rumors regarding the Rain Abbess. The Rain Abbess status on the Delight Plane was equivalent to the Celestial Sword Saint's status on the Desolate Plane. They were both supreme experts that no one could defeat, making them extremely aloof. They alone could pressure all the peak experts of an entire plane to the point of suffocation. As a matter of fact, there were even people who treated the Rain Abbess of the Delight Plane as someone on the same level as the Celestial Sword Saint from their Desolate Plane. After learning that the figure was the Rain Abbess, both Sha Yun and Su Zhiping could not help but gasp. They became extremely cautious. "I don't want to harass you. You can go," the Rain Abbess said. She gave off a bearing of authority as she spoke to them without leaving any room for refutation. It was as if she did not take Su Zhiping and the other seniors at all. "Rain Abbess, are you protecting the martial soul lineage?" Su Zhiping asked with some reluctance to accept the whole situation. If he let the martial soul lineage go, all that awaited his Su family was endless trouble. "I give you 10 seconds. You can leave safely during that time. After those 10 seconds, you can no longer blame me for harassing the weak," the Rain Abbess said coldly, directly stating an ultimatum. She left no room for negotiation. Chapter 26-27. The Strength of the Rain Abbess. 1. Su Zhiping and Sha Yun's expressions became extremely ugly when they faced the Rain Abbess' order-like tone. They even felt furious. The Rain Abbess was simply far too overbearing. After all, the two of them were famed, peak figures on the Desolate Plane. Even though their cultivation could not rival the Rain Abbess, she had still taken them far too lightly. She actually treated them like she was above them. As a result, Su Zhiping and Sha Yun, who usually gave the orders and could determine the situation and direction of the entire Desolate Plane, felt extremely uncomfortable. "Brother Su, it looks like the Rain Abbess of the Delight Plane is determined to protect the martial soul lineage. What do we do?" Sha Yun asked secretly. He was surrounded by a layer of extremely brutal blade qi, and his voice was extremely stern. "Our actions today have already resulted in the development of an unforgivable grievance with the martial soul lineage. Based off the martial soul lineage's past behavior, they will definitely seek revenge in the future. Coupled with how they have the martial soul mountain as a place to retreat to, they can immediately vanish with the martial soul mountain if they can't win. The method of trapping them here today probably won't work again. So if we don't destroy the martial soul lineage completely today, the ones being destroyed in the future will likely be our Su family, the Midheaven clan, and your Divine Blade sect, Su Jiping replied sternly. The Rain Abyss appearance had thrown him into a dilemma. Sha Yun sighed inside. He had never thought the martial soul lineage would actually have the backing of someone as powerful as the Rain Abyss. If he had known earlier that the martial soul lineage was under the protection of the Rain Abyss, he never would have opposed them even if it meant sacrificing a protector sword from the Radiant Saint Hall. After a moment of hesitation, Sha Yun continued, "Why don't we try negotiating with the Rain Abyss? As long as the martial soul lineage can forgive us for what we did today and swear that they won't make trouble for us in the future, we won't oppose the martial soul lineage again." Sha Yun was grim. In the past, the three organizations had never been on any particular bad terms with the martial soul lineage. It was all because of Gong Sun Ji that they became enemies. Su Jiping shook his head gently. "It's useless. Look at the Rain Abyss. Does she seem like she wants to negotiate with us? And considering how stubborn every single member of the martial soul lineage is, they will never agree." At this moment, Huang Fugi, who had been heavily injured by Hun Zhang's heaven-severing technique, finally recovered. With a sheet-white face and bleeding facial cavities, he flew over from the distance slowly. The Rain Abyss formation of Cloud's Urge and Rain Flood was extremely large. Even though Huang Fugi was relatively far away from the mountain soul, he was still within the range of the formation. Huang Fugi stared at the hazy Rain Abyss with bloodshot eyes and said sternly, "Rain Abyss, the Midheaven clan, Su family, Divine Blade sect, and Radiant Saint Hall are all working together. We now represent the most powerful organization on the Desolate Plain. We can even represent the entire Desolate Plain. Offending an entire plain for the martial soul lineage is not wise. And, Rain Abyss, it seems like your Delight Plain isn't very peaceful either. I hope the Rain Abyss can properly consider this all." Huang Fugi knew quite a lot about the situation on the Delight Plain. He knew that the Rain Abyss seemed to be interested in conquering the entire place, so over 70% of the peak organizations there had secretly formed an alliance. They were ready to oppose the Cloud's Urge Empire's attempt. As a result, he directly mentioned the situation of the Delight Plain in hopes that the Rain Abyss could realize what he was trying to point at. The native organizations from the Delight Plain were already enough work for the Cloud's Urge Empire. Offending the peak organizations on the Desolate Plain as well would really not be a wise decision. The Cloud's Urge Empire only possessed such a great status because of the Rain Abyss existence. If the Rain Abyss were gone, the Cloud's Urge Empire would even pale slightly in comparison to their Midheaven clan. This was because the Cloud's Urge Empire did not have a second Mid-Grand Prime. After saying that, Huang Fugi paid close attention to the Rain Abyss. He hoped that his words would influence the Rain Abyss into retreating due to the difficulties that would be involved. Unfortunately, they achieved nothing. All that awaited them was a cold sentence from the Rain Abyss. "You still have the final 3 seconds." The Rain Abyss did not say much. It was only a few words, but it disclosed her determination. She left no room for negotiation, and she did not take the peak organizations on the Desolate Plain seriously either. She was truly insolent and utterly fearless. I want to destroy the martial soul lineage today. No one can stop me." Suddenly, Gong Sun Ji bellowed out. Godslayer's sword in his hand shone with dazzling light as an earth-shaking power leaked out. With the sword in hand and light around him, he directly slashed at the Rain Abyss. He did not know who the Rain Abyss was, nor did he know how powerful the Rain Abyss was. However, he did have Godslayer's sword in hand. Under the protection of the sword's power, he feared no expert. He feared no threat. "No matter who you are, I'll cut you to pieces first since you're getting in the way of me destroying the martial soul lineage," Gong Sun Ji called out. Godslayer's sword shone brightly as billowing energy erupted like a flood. He directly slashed at the Rain Abyss. A gleam of vicious light immediately flashed through Su Jiping's eyes when he saw Gong Sun Ji attack the Rain Abyss. If there was only him and Sha Yun, he naturally would not have the courage to point his weapon at the Rain Abyss. However, he could give it a try if Gong Sun Ji was included. Even though Gong Sun Ji's personal cultivation was lackluster, the sword in his hand could not be underestimated. Huang Fugi, let's cooperate with Gong Sun Ji to keep the Rain Abyss trapped. Sha Yun, kill the martial soul lineage quickly, Gong Sun Ji said to Huang Fugi and Sha Yun secretly. With that, Su Jiping moved without any hesitation at all. The dense laws of the sun around him immediately flared into solar flames. They flooded towards the Rain Abyss as they flickered in an attempt to suppress the Rain Abyss. Huang Fugi did not hesitate either. Even though his soul was heavily injured, which affected his battle prowess, he could not care about it all at a time like this. He forcefully struck out despite the risk of his soul's wounds rapidly worsening. He did not dare to leave the martial soul lineage alive. If they were not destroyed today, the ones destroyed would likely be Huang Fugi's Midheaven clan instead. Moreover, Huang Fugi had truly come to understand the strength of the martial soul lineage through this battle. The martial soul lineage could injure him to such a degree when they were in a hurry. If they had plenty of time to prepare, his fate would probably be far worse than just a wounded soul. Even he would suffer like this, so the fate of his Midheaven clan would go without saying. An illusionary river was conjured above Huang Fugi's head. It surged with huge waves. Terrifying and dense killing intent surged out from the river, annihilating the space there. This was the greatest secret technique that Huang Fugi possessed. He used his comprehension of the way of slaughter to conjure a river of slaughter. It crushed down on space along the way and gushed towards the Rain Abyss with a presence of slaughter that could seemingly obliterate anything. When he used this secret technique, Huang Fugi could not help but cough up a few mouthfuls of blood. It was very harmful to him to use such a powerful secret technique in his current state. Immediately, Gong Sun Ji, Su Jiping, and Huang Fugi struck out against the Rain Abyss simultaneously. As for Sha Yun, he rushed towards the martial soul lineage. Chapter 26-28. The Strength of the Rain Abyss, 2. You want to try acting up before me even with your strength? You overestimate yourselves. The Rain Abyss was surrounded by dense power, blurring her figure and appearance. Only a cold voice rang out. Facing Su Jiping, Huang Fugi, and Gong Sun Ji's combined attacks, the Rain Abyss was extremely composed. Her cool, frigid voice was filled with a sliver of disdain towards the three of them. As a matter of fact, even Sha Yun's attempt to kill off the martial soul lineage seemed like a foolish and hilarious act in the Rain Abyss eyes. Suddenly, thunder exploded loudly in the surging sea of clouds. A huge bolt of lightning shone with illuminating light. It tore through space like a twisting, furious dragon and pierced through the clouds as it traveled directly towards Sha Yun. The lightning flickered with sparks as if it were covered with a layer of thin hair. Each spark was extremely terrifying. As they danced about, space would become riddled with cracks. The moment the lightning fell, Sha Yun's expression changed drastically. He became extremely grim. Regular lightning could not even touch a hair of his with his cultivation as a peak third heavenly layer Grand Prime. However, this bolt of lightning possessed devastating power that made him shiver. The level of the laws of lightning within it had completely exceeded his comprehension of the way of the blade. As a matter of fact, he felt that it was possible that the bolt of lightning was no longer as simple as something condensed from the energy of the world. Instead, it was an attack completely condensed from the laws of lightning, making it extremely powerful. The lightning moved far too quickly, arriving with a single flash. Sha Yun was unable to dodge it despite his great cultivation. At that critical moment, Sha Yun gave up on attacking the martial soul lineage without a second thought. He swung the blade in his hand at the aggressive bolt of lightning using his full strength. The attack condensed the powerful and ruthless intent from Sha Yun's way of the blade. It had also fused with Sha Yun's vital energies, so the blade intent that erupted from the attack surged out like a flood, obliterating all the rain nearby. Sha Yun's attack was powerful, but the bolt of lightning was even mightier. When Sha Yun's blade came in contact with the lightning, there was no impact at all. The blade and Sha Yun was completely swallowed up by the lightning. His attack only managed to make the lightning dim slightly. That was it. Arg! Sha Yun's cry, perhaps out of fury or perhaps out of agony, rang out from the blinding lightning. In the next moment he flew backwards out of the lightning. His face had become completely charred, and it was like he had been burnt black. It was not just his face. All of his exposed skin had become pitch black as well. Even the god artifact on him had completely dimmed. He gave off a heavy smell of being burnt. Having endured the bolt of lightning, Sha Yun seemed to run out of energy. He clutched his blade as he laid in the air powerlessly. Sparks constantly flickered on his charged body, and every time that happened, he could not help but jolt a little. The Rain Abyss had not laid a single finger on him from the beginning till the end, but Sha Yun had already gotten heavily injured. At the same time, the Rain Abyss did nothing about Huang Fugi and Su Zhiping's attacks either. Two swords condensed purely out of rain on her left and right shot towards the two with lightning speed. Boom! A great rumble rang out. The sun that Su Zhiping had transformed into blazed with solar flames and gave off incinerating heat. However, it was as thin as paper before the rain sword from the Rain Abyss. His sun had been cleaved into two by the sword. When the solar flames condensed from the laws of the sun came in contact with the sword of rain, they failed to evaporate the rain. Instead, they were put out. Spurt! Blood sprayed from Su Zhiping's mouth as his expression changed from the pain. He had been heavily injured after taking a single strike. At the same time, the other sword of rain collided with Huang Fugi. The river of slaughter he had conjured through his strongest secret technique clearly could not withstand a single blow from the sword of rain. It was slashed into two and gradually vanished from the space there. Swish! The Rain Abyss sword did not slow down. It shot right through him, passing by Huang Fugi's neck as a hazy streak of light under his shocked gaze. Hot blood spurted out from Huang Fugi's neck as his head was thrown high up. Huang Fugi had been beheaded in a single stroke. Huang Fugi's eyes were filled with shock. Although he knew the Rain Abyss was very powerful, he had never expected her to be so powerful. Even with his great strength that could basically dominate the desolate plain, he was so feeble before the Rain Abyss. Even though he had been injured already and was nowhere close to his peak condition, he was still a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime after all. It should never have been bad to the point where his head got cut off in a single strike. Su Zhiping paled in fright when he saw Huang Fugi's head fly off. He ignored his wounds and arrived before Huang Fugi with a flash. He grabbed the body and the flying head, bringing them together again. I heard a few protector swords had appeared in the Radiant Saint Hall recently. The protector swords are indeed very powerful, but in your hands, you're disgracing their names instead. The Rain Abyss did not even glance at Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi. She stared right at Godslayer's sword that Gong Sunji swung towards her through the mist and gently shook her head. She raised her hand slowly and caught the sword. As the protector sword cleaved down with devastating power, the Rain Abyss' slender hand wrapped around its sharp edge. As if her 5 slender fingers contained unbelievably great power, they formed a claw and locked down on the two faces of the sword tightly. Godslayer's sword suddenly erupted with terrifying power. It was like a tempest, but it failed to harm the Rain Abyss at all. The Rain Abyss hand had erupted with a power no weaker than Godslayer's sword. They wore down each other. This was a clash between two supreme powers. Although it was silent and caused no disturbance at all, the pressure was alarming. Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi were both shocked by it. The Rain Abyss actually caught Godslayer's sword with her bare hands. Huang Fugi's eyes immediately narrowed when he saw this after his head was reconnected. Su Zhiping glanced around and said grimly, "It is the formation. The formation is very powerful." The Rain Abyss seems to have fused perfectly with the formation, allowing her to use its power as she wishes. She was already extremely powerful. Now that she has assistance of the formation, she has become completely unbelievable. Chapter 26-29. The Strength of the Rain Abyss. 3. Having reached such a conclusion, Huang Fugi and Su Zhiping's expressions became extremely ugly. At that moment, they realized that if the Rain Abyss did not let them leave, they would probably die right here. The the Rain Abbess had already fused with the formation. Within the formation, she was the absolute ruler. Unless the formation was destroyed, they could not leave. Even the powerful ancient secret techniques that they knew for fleeing were useless in the Rain Abbess formation. The formation of Cloud's Urge and Rain Flood was no ordinary formation. As soon as it was completed, it was equivalent to its own individual world, separate from outside. Let alone Su Jiping and Huang Fugi, even if they worked with Gong Sun Ji, they would still be nowhere close to destroying the formation given the strength and might that the Rain Abbess had just displayed. Why, you actually caught my Godslayer's sword with your bare hands? Gong Sun Ji's shocked voice rang out from the light around him. He understood the power of Godslayer's sword. He even knew its origins, which was exactly why he was shocked when the Rain Abbess caught the sword with her bare hands. After all, Godslayer's sword was the weapon that the leader of the 9 retainers who followed his ancestor in the past had transformed into. His flesh, his cultivation, and all of his vital energies had condensed into the weapon in his hand. According to the fragments of information he received from the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance, he could already guess the leader of the 9 retainers' past cultivation. He was a 9th heavenly layer Grand Prime. Even though he still could not unleash the full power of Godslayer's sword with his current cultivation, he refused to believe that the weapon could just be caught bare-handed in such an easy fashion. Do you really think that no one can do anything to you just because have this sword? The sword is very powerful, but unfortunately, the person who wields it is far too weak, said the Rain Abbess with heavy contempt. With that, her other hand extended out from the power of rain and clouds. It gently pressed towards Gong Sun Ji. Her palm strike seemed like a gentle breeze. There were no special effects, nor were there any pulses of energy. However, when she struck out, it felt like all the energy in space, or even the world, was contained in the hand. It was as if the Rain Abbess had not struck out with her hand but with the entire world. Nearby, Su Jiping and Huang Fugi's faces both hardened. Their eyes immediately narrowed to the size of pins as they stared straight at the Rain Abbess hand. As 4th heavenly layer Grand Primes, their senses were extremely sharp. They could sense an invisible power of destruction from the Rain Abbess' gentle strike. The power was so great that it shocked them. When the Rain Abbess' gentle hand landed on the protective light around Gong Sun Ji, the barrier of light with extremely astonishing defense behaved like it had just received a heavy blow. The entire barrier began to cave in. It was also at this moment that the Rain Abbess' seemingly harmless hand erupted with supreme power. Like a tidal flood, the power immediately condensed into a rain droplet under the Rain Abbess' precise control. It took advantage of the concave protective light and suddenly shot out like a sword in an attempt to penetrate Gong Sun Ji's defenses. If Gong Sun Ji did not have the protection of the protector sword, just the shockwave from the Rain Abbess' astonishing strike would have been enough to claim his life given his mere cultivation as a god king. Oh no, the Rain Abbess is trying to kill Gong Sun Ji. Su Jiping and Huang Fugi's hearts immediately tightened at the sight of this. They became worried. They did not care about Gong Sun Ji's life. What they really cared about was the promise that Gong Sun Ji had made to them, which was bestowing the remaining protector swords to the juniors in their clans that had become hallowed Saint Masters. If Gong Sun Ji died here, everything that they did on the cloud plane would have been for naught. The droplet of rain was like a sharp awl, pushing against the protective light and rapidly deepening. The powerful defense that Gong Sun Ji took pride in had actually been shaken up by the Rain Abbess. Gong Sun Ji stared right at the droplet of rain that gradually approached him through the protective light. Sensing the astonishing power within the rain droplet, his face finally changed. He became filled with fear and worry. There was uncontainable dread in his eyes now. The light has almost collapsed. It has almost given way. Where did this Rain Abbess come from? How is she so powerful? Endure it, endure it. You have to endure it. Godslayer's sword, you were the most powerful retainer under my ancestor in the past. You have to endure it. You can't fail. Gong Sun Ji began to panic when he finally faced danger. He prayed inside. At that moment, he could truly feel the threat of death. It made his heart tremble. It made him feel fear. Moreover, even his Godslayer's sword had been firmly clamped down by the Rain Abyss. As a result, Gongsun-ji could not even draw the sword back. He could only watch the protective light from the sword be compressed rapidly while being unable to do anything at all. The Rain Abyss presence continued to rise. The energy within her erupted violently. All of it gathered on the droplet of rain, providing an endless supply of energy to the droplet. Even power from the formation of clouds urge and rain flood had been poured in such that the droplet of rain did not weaken at all as it became locked in a stalemate against Gongsun-ji's protective light. Instead, it grew more and more powerful. The Rain Abyss had basically ignored Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi. Instead, Gongsun-ji had become her greatest target. The Rain Abyss was enveloped with the power of clouds and rain such that her face was shrouded. Otherwise, they would have discovered that her cold eyes were filled with killing intent. However, when only a thin layer of the protective light remained, an extremely ancient will seem to awaken from within the protector sword. At that moment, Godslayer's sword in Gongsun-ji's hands suddenly seemed to gain life. It had sprung to life. As the ancient will awakened, Godslayer's sword suddenly erupted with light. It became even more blinding than the sun in an instant. The protective light that had almost fallen to the Rain Abyss attack was replenished by a tremendous energy, rapidly stabilizing and slowly pushing back the droplet of rain. The protective light had returned to its previous state. Moreover, its defenses were now much more powerful than before. The awakening of the will did not increase the strength of Godslayer's sword. It only provided the sword with even greater defensive power. The Rain Abyss snorted coldly. With a single thought, countless bolts of lightning shot over from the formation of clouds urge and rain flood. Every single bolt was like a dragon as they all moved together. It caused a huge disturbance and created quite a grand scene. All of it landed on the protective light around Gongsun-ji. The light endured it all. After being strengthened, it became even more difficult to destroy. Chapter 2630. 9 Brilliant Schemes. Seeing how the Rain Abyss attack had failed to get through his defenses and had instead made the light around him become even more powerful, Gongsun-ji immediately calmed down. At that moment, he suddenly felt like the Rain Abyss was not as terrifying as he imagined her to be. Ah, Rain Abyss, you aren't weak, but your strength still isn't enough before my defenses. If you have the ability, try to get through them. Gongsun-ji laughed aloud. The strengthening of the protective light had made him extremely confident. He became even more confident that the protective light would not fall no matter who he faced. Once his life was no longer threatened, his fear and dread towards the Rain Abyss directly plummeted until it completely vanished. Rain Abyss, you better save your efforts. You can't get through my defenses with your current strength. If you leave right now and avoid interfering in my grievances with the martial soul lineage, I can forget about your offending actions today. Otherwise, you will become my greatest enemy besides the martial soul lineage. I'll definitely pay a visit to your whatever clouds urge empire with the other protectors of the Radiant Saint Hall some other time, Gongsun-ji said in high spirits. He spoke extremely arrogantly, directly threatening the Rain Abyss. Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi's faces completely darkened after they heard Gongsun-ji's words. They both cursed at how ignorant he was, even daring to threaten an expert like the Rain Abyss. Every single expert on the level of the Rain Abyss was revered and well respected. It would be best to avoid provoking them. Even if there were some minor disagreements, Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi believed that they should just endure it. Even if they could not endure it, they could not afford to offend the Rain Abyss completely unless they had sufficient strength. In particular, they were currently trapped in the Rain Abyss formation. If they completely offended her, a good fate would definitely not await them. So much for Gongsun-ji. With a single threat, he directly made the Rain Abyss a complete enemy. If they still had a chance to reconcile with the Rain Abyss earlier, that chance had been completely wiped out by Gongsun-ji now. How is Gongsun-ji so stupid? Isn't he just looking for trouble? Huang Fugi and Su Zhiping communicated secretly. They had already begun to resent Gongsun-ji. He was under the protection of the Protector Sword, so the Rain Abyss would struggle to harm him, but what about the two of them? They were unable to bear the Rain Abbess' wrath. If it were not for the temptation of the 3 remaining protector swords of the Radiant Saint Hall, they would have never been willing to come looking for trouble with Gong Sun Ji. Even a mere God King dares to threaten me. Impressive. Very impressive. The Rain Abbess' voice rang out extremely coldly. With that, the formation of clouds urge and rain floods suddenly jolted. The thick clouds that formed a prison at the boundary suddenly began to surge, causing the entire formation to rapidly shrink. As the formation shrank, everyone could sense the might of the formation increase. Afterwards, a tremendous power erupted from the formation of clouds urge and rain flood. Just like a tidal wave, it swept through the entire space within the formation. In the end, a swathe of raindrops formed there. Every droplet of rain possessed pure laws of the world. Every droplet of rain possessed astonishing energy pulses. Afterwards, the droplets of rain gathered in from all directions, surrounding Gong Sun Ji with surging energy. In an instant, Gong Sun Ji became enveloped by a huge ball condensed from countless droplets of rain. The earth-shaking power and pure laws of the world pressed against Gong Sun Ji's protective light like maggots, gnawing away at it bit by bit. The Rain Abbess's actions were very simple. Since she could not destroy it, she would wear it down bit by bit. Immediately, the protective light around Gong Sun Ji was rapidly compressed. In particular, the outer layer was slowly being gnawed away. Although the process was very slow, his defenses were indeed vanishing. Gong Sun Ji could not laugh anymore. His expression changed once again, and an ill omen rose up from his heart. He had already been firmly entrapped by the Rain Abbess. He could not move. He could only endure it all with the defenses of the protector sword. There was nothing else he could do. Huang Fugi, Su Jiping, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and do something. Gong Sun Ji called out. However, Huang Fugi and Su Jiping acted like they had heard nothing. They did nothing. They felt completely powerless before the Rain Abbess' strength. They no longer had any will to fight. They understood that if they kept fighting, the fate that awaited the two of them was death. As a result, even when they knew that the situation was against Gong Sun Ji, they did not try to do anything. They were still slightly hopeful that the Rain Abbess would spare them. As for Sha Yun, he just twitched about while drifting through outer space after being heavily injured by the bolt of lightning. He had not recovered. At the same time, on the most sacred Star Brilliance mountain that represented the glory and honor of the Star Brilliance Plain, a middle-aged man in robes riddled with stars sat within a secret room, seemingly cultivating. He was the renowned 9 Brilliance Star Lord. Suddenly, the 9 Brilliance Star Lord slowly opened his eyes. Countless stars seemed to revolve in his eyes, shining with starlight. I anticipated the betrayal of the native organizations on the Cloud Plain. I also anticipated how the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance would not miss out on this fantastic opportunity, as well as how Gong Sun Ji would take action. However, I never, ever considered the possibility of the Rain Abbess killing her way over from the Delight Plain. What puzzles me is why would the Rain Abbess assist Jian Qin, or should I say the martial soul lineage? According to my understanding, she doesn't seem to have any connections to the martial soul lineage or Jian Qin at all. Is there another side to the story? However, her appearance has rendered my plans null. As a result, I have to find a way to keep her busy. Once the Rain Abbess is removed from the equation, just Gong Sun Ji's group will be enough to kill Jian Qin. Perhaps Yaoer can survive. The 9 Brilliance Star Lord muttered to himself. Afterwards, with a flip of his hand, a communication jade talisman appeared. Blue Sky, aren't you lacking the main material for your high-quality god artifact, the Water Cloud Iron? The Rain Abbess just happens to have a piece of it. After sending the message, the 9 Brilliance Star Lord stowed the jade talisman away and said to himself, with Blue Sky taking part, the Rain Abbess will be completely busy. Now, there shouldn't be any unexpected changes to the situation. Moreover, I only sent a single piece of information to Blue Sky to target the Rain Abbess. It has nothing to do with Jian Qin. However, I still can't get too involved. If I do leave behind some kind of trace and the Inata Grand Exalt catches it, I'll be in trouble. Severing a person's way will lead to unforgivable grievances. Chapter 2631. Planet Wando. Across the vast Saints world, there were a total of 49 great plains and 81 great planets. Countless cultivators dwelled on them, and numerous sects and clans stood there. Endless conflict and blood being spilt was almost a daily affair. Planet Wando was one of the 81 great planets. At the same time, it was a planet relatively close to the Cloud Plain, one of the 49 great plains. There was a renowned mountain on Planet Wando. It was called the Venerable Mountain. Basically, everyone on Planet Wando knew about this mountain. Its name was widespread. Whenever the cultivators or various organizations on the planet mentioned the mountain, they would all show respect or perhaps even reverence. Venerable Mountain was where the Lord of Planet Wando cultivated. The Lord of Planet Wando was the undisputed strongest expert on the planet. His existence on the planet was like the king of a kingdom, a supreme existence. An old man in blue robes currently sat on a throne within a decorated palace on the Venerable Mountain. His eyes were filled with excitement. During all these years, I've scoured the 49 great plains and 81 great planets, but I still failed to find a piece of water cloud iron. Let alone the material itself, I couldn't even find any news about it. As a 9th grade God-tier material, it's far too rare, far too precious, and far too difficult to find. However, my faith didn't go unrewarded in the end. I've finally gotten my hands on information regarding the water cloud iron. I have to get it. Even though I think the 9 brilliant Star Lord is probably scheming something for telling me this, so what if I let him benefit for the sake of the water cloud iron? I'll just treat it as returning the favor for telling me this. Others may fear the rain abyss of the Delight Plain, but I don't, the blue-robed old man murmured to himself. He did not give off any presence at all, but he seemed like he resonated with the ways, seemingly fusing with the surroundings. This was a bearing that would only appear on those who had comprehended the laws of the world to a certain level. As the blue-robed old man said all that, he had left the palace already. With a single step, he entered the boundless sea of stars and hurried to the Cloud Plain. The old man in blue was the Lord of Planet Wando. People called him the Blue Sky Venerable. All 81 great stars in the Saints' world possessed a planet lord. Their strength would vary. Basically, all the weaker planets had lords that were 1st or 2nd heavenly layer grand primes, while the stronger planets would have late grand primes or even 9th heavenly layer grand primes. The Blue Sky Venerable was an existence that ranked towards the top among all the planet lords. Experts at such a level would simply travel through the sea of stars. They would rarely use teleportation formations. They would only use them when their destination was extremely distant. The war that spanned the entire Cloud Plain had begun. The armies of the Four Symbols Alliance had all been mobilized. They charged out of the southern region that they had guarded with painstaking effort and chased the Righteous Alliance to the central region. The experts of the two alliances were currently embroiled in a devastating battle in the central region. Some chaotic primes or even grand primes had reached outer space for their fights. Even though the Righteous Alliance received the full support of the Shi Empire from the north and the Zaheo Empire from the east, they were still forced into a retreat by the Four Symbols Alliance due to the heavy toll the betrayal had taken. They suffered heavy casualties. Even the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was unable to remain uninvolved. He gave up on suppressing the curse and unleashed his cultivation for one last struggle against the Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance. His flame of life wavered. It dimmed. After he stopped suppressing the curse, it spread even faster. Even if the Righteous Alliance emerged victorious in the end, who knows whether the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak would be able to survive. The Pingtian Empire was naturally involved in the war as well. The young Star Lord personally led experts of the Four Symbols Alliance to encircle the Empire. The Pingtian Empire was nowhere close to being the young Star Lord and his people's opponent. The formation protecting the Empire shattered before long. Afterwards, they charged right towards the Imperial Palace of the Pingtian Empire. The Imperial Palace had already been reduced to ruins. Blood flowed through the ruins as countless corpses were strewn about. The young Star Lord had already demolished the imperial palace of the Pingtian Empire. The young Star Lord currently stood with his back turned to the ruins. He stared into the distance arrogantly, looking in the direction of the Dong'an province. Young Star Lord, we've searched the entire imperial palace, but we've failed to find the emperor of the Pingtian Empire's corpse. I think Mo Xingfeng is probably hiding in the Tianyuan clan, a god king said politely from behind the young Star Lord. It's fine if you can't find him. Destroying the imperial palace is only the appetizer. What's the situation with the Tianyuan clan? Has their formations fallen yet? The young Star Lord asked commandingly. Young Star Lord, the formations protecting the provincial city are far more powerful than the ones that protect the empire. There's a group of people doing their best to destroy the formation, said the God King. Let's go to the Dong'an province. The young Star Lord waved his hand and immediately rushed to the Dong'an province with many experts. The Dong'an province possessed the only provincial city in perfect condition. The entire place was protected by two powerful formations. One protected the entire city, while the other protected the Tianyuan clan. The formations were stronger the further in they were. Even chaotic primes would struggle to get through them. Now, the huge city was filled with refugees. The moment the war erupted, some cultivators and nobles had fled to the Dong'an province from the 35 other provinces and imperial city. They hoped that they could avoid the war under the protection of the formations of the provincial city. With a surge of people entering, the tremendous city immediately became packed. The streets and alleyways were filled with people. But now, the people who sought refuge in the city began to regret their choice. They discovered that while the formations were powerful, they were all surrounded by the experts of the Four Symbols Alliance. They could not leave even if they wanted to now. Chapter 2632. Inciting a Rebellion. Boom. 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 Deafening rumbles constantly rang out outside the formations of the city. With each rumble, a powerful shockwave would sweep through the surroundings. The expressions of all the cultivators hiding in the city would change. The strongest among these cultivators were only God Kings, and there were not a lot of them. Most of them were below God King, including plenty of Mortal Realm, Sainthood, and Origin Realm cultivators. The energy that wreaked havoc outside the formation had already reached the Primordial Realm, possibly even the level of Chaotic Primes. The low-level cultivators hiding in the provincial city felt like the world was ending. Dad, the formations of the city are shaking so much. Can the city stop them? Asked a young girl among the crowd fearfully as she nervously looked at the sky. Junior, don't be scared. The city has the Tianyuan clan. The formation won't fall. I heard that the Tianyuan clan has a chaotic prime. With that expert's protection, nothing will happen to the city. The girl's father clutched her freezing little hand and comforted her. However, from how nervous he seemed, he was nowhere near as calm as he seemed on the surface. Grandpa, will we die? To another side, a boy looked at an old man. He was afraid. Donger, the Tianyuan clan is very powerful. We have to believe in the Tianyuan clan. As long as the Tianyuan clan is present, we won't die, said the boy's grandfather in a husky voice as he rubbed the boy's head benevolently. This happened in various places across the city. Now that they were trapped and were facing a disaster, there were people in the vast crowds who held blind faith in the Tianyuan clan, believing that they could survive anything as long as the Tianyuan clan was present. However, there were also people filled with despair. They could already tell that the Tianyuan clan could not even protect themselves, let alone protect them. They were certain that they would probably be pulled into the entire mess, unable to escape from the disaster. As the strongest expert of the Tianyuan clan, Su Ran personally watched over the entire place, maintaining the formation. She hovered in the air as she shone with dazzling light. She seemed to resonate with the formation. She used her cultivation to support the formation such that it became even more powerful. Below, the many members of the Tianyuan clan, from the upper echelon to regular guards and servants, had already gathered. They were all grim. Some female servants had even paled out of fright, filled with fear and unease. They were afraid of death. Senior Su, there should be no problem stopping them with the formations of the city, right? The emperor of the Pingtian Empire, Mo Xingfeng, asked sternly. The two formations were the last lines of defense for the Tian Yuan clan. There won't be any problems for now, but the young Star Lord is hurrying over with another group of people. If they attack the formation together, the formation's energy will be depleted several times faster. Even with me here, we won't be able to last for too long, said Su Ran. She was also grim. If the formations were as powerful as when Ming Xie cast them down, just the formations themselves would be more than enough to stop these people. We could even kill them all with the might of the killing formation. Unfortunately, the formations were destroyed by the First Majesty. Many of the foundations are already ruined. Even though I've repaired quite a lot of it, their power has decreased by far too much, Su Ran said in pity. As soon as she said that, a group of people rushed over aggressively from above the provincial city. There were over 1,000 of them. The person leading them happened to be the young Star Lord. How much longer before the formation breaks? The young Star Lord stared right ahead with a frown as soon as he arrived. Two chaotic primes followed him closely. They were responsible for his safety. Young Star Lord, if you include them, it'll take a day at most. One of the chaotic primes attacking the formation arrived before the young lord and looked at the experts that the young Star Lord had brought with him. The young Star Lord looked at the fearful cultivators hiding within in the city, and he actually smiled mysteriously. There's no hurry. Tell all the cultivators in the provincial city that regardless of birth, regardless of background, as long as they attack the Tian Yuan clan, I'll spare them. The eyes of the three great elders beside the young Star Lord lit up when they heard that. They all smiled and one of them praised, "Young Star Lord, are you trying to get them to turn on themselves? Even though the cultivators inside the formation are weak, unable to do anything to the formation, it's a good way to affect their morale." Ah, that's right. The Tian Yuan clan accepted them into the provincial city to protect them in such a generous manner. If these people begin attacking the Tian Yuan clan's formations, I wonder how the Tian Yuan clan will feel. I think the people of the Tian Yuan clan will start coughing up blood out of anger. Ha! The three great elders chuckled aloud. They were all high-ranking members of the Four Symbols Alliance. They had personally experienced the dire straits that the martial soul lineage had forced them into when the lineage worked together with the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. They immediately contacted an Infinite Prime. The Infinite Prime called out thunderously, where his voice rang out through the entire provincial city as he explained the young Star Lord's promise. Immediately, the provincial city began to surge. Some of the despaired cultivators who understood their predicament seemed to see a sliver of hope. Their dim eyes suddenly lit up, and after a moment of hesitation, they charged out of the crowd and headed towards the Tian Yuan clan. Immediately, a series of booms rang out from the Tian Yuan clan's location. Cultivators had already begun attacking their protective formations. The actions of these people led to a domino effect. Even more people began to take part in the attack against the Tian Yuan clan. Stop! You ingrates, how can you do something like this? If it were not for the Tian Yuan clan letting you into the provincial city, you would have died in the wilderness long ago. How would you still be alive right now? How can you return our kindness like this and do something so treacherous? Li Hu, how dare you attack the Tian Yuan clan? I never thought you were someone like this. We no longer know each other. Watch my sword. There were naturally many people who defended the Tian Yuan clan in the Pingtian Empire. As there were people who attacked the Tian Yuan clan, there were also people who defended it. They wanted to stand with the Tian Yuan clan even if they would have to risk their lives. At that moment, the cultivators defending and attacking the Tian Yuan clan formed a messy crowd. The entire provincial city descended into chaos. In the Tian Yuan clan, Shiyu's face had darkened out of anger. Many other important members had very ugly expressions as well. Although the attacks from the cultivators outside could not even scratch the formation around the Tian Yuan clan, their actions made the entire clan furious. Chapter 2633, The Betrayal of the Heavenly Moon Empire from the Air, The young Star Lord watched these cultivators turn on themselves and felt extremely satisfied. At that moment, he felt like he was toying with lives, where he could decide their fates on a whim. This was an intoxicating feeling for him. He enjoyed it very much. At this moment, an infinite prime elder suddenly appeared before the young Star Lord. Young Star Lord, I've just received the news that the Heavenly Moon Empire wishes to serve the young Star Lord. The Heavenly Moon Empire? That ancient empire that yielded to the Tianyuan clan? It took the young Star Lord quite some time to remember the Heavenly Moon Empire's existence. The Heavenly Moon Empire was just too weak. They were a measly ancient empire, so the young Star Lord had never taken them seriously. As the only child of the 9 brilliant Star Lord, even if he was only a foster son, he had a supreme status. He basically only came into contact with chaotic primes usually, and even meeting grand primes would not be anything special. A mere ancient empire naturally could not attract his attention. That's right, it's them, the infinite prime affirmed. The young Star Lord smiled evilly. The Heavenly Moon Empire is an organization that has yielded to the Tianyuan clan, but now they want to serve me. That's pretty interesting. After a short pause, the young Star Lord continued, tell them that if they want to serve me, I need to see whether they have the strength or not. Yes, I'll pass this on to them right now. The infinite prime elder backed away. The two ancestors of the Heavenly Moon Empire had gathered together in the depths of their imperial palace. They were extremely stern. The young Star Lord has been very straightforward. What he wants us to actually do is to attack the Tianyuan clan with our forces. But once we do that, we'll be going down a slippery slope, one of the ancestors said sternly. If they mishandled this matter, their Heavenly Moon Empire would only be awaiting destruction. Since we've already made the decision to serve the young Star Lord, let's completely stand on his side and stop hesitating. Let's do it. With their current situation, it's impossible for the Tianyuan clan and Righteous Alliance to turn the tides, said the other ancestor. They were both infinite primes, and they had no idea that the situation with the battle in outer space had changed. That was because the mountain soul was extremely distant from the cloud plane now. Let alone them, but even chaotic primes and some weaker grand primes would not be able to check what was happening. Very soon, all the experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire were assembled. Under the lead of the two ancestors, they charged towards the Pingtian Empire aggressively. The ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, Xingping, was present as well. He led the God King elders of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds to take part in the operation. There were not a lot of people from the empire and sect taking part, only several dozen. However, they were all God Kings. Moreover, many of the God Kings carried tiny divine halls. Over 1 million of the elite troops from the Heavenly Moon Empire were assembled within the divine halls. Jianchen, you arrived at our Taoist sect of Calm Clouds in such an aloof and overbearing manner before, making me cut off my own arm. That's a permanent stain to my name. Today, I don't need you to cut off your own arm like how I did. I only need to personally destroy your Tianyuan clan. This time, my Taoist sect of Divine Clouds will devastate your entire clan, thought Xingping. One of his 2 sleeves was empty. Clearly, he was missing an arm. The Heavenly Moon Empire had formally betrayed the Tianyuan clan, and they now opposed the Tianyuan clan. They split into 2. The 2 ancestors of the Heavenly Moon Empire and the ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds traveled straight to the Dong'an province with a portion of their God Kings to assist the young Star Lord in getting through the formation. Meanwhile, the remaining God Kings took the divine halls containing over 1 million troops to take over the other cities in the Pingtian Empire. Even the ruined palace of the Pingtian Empire became occupied by the soldiers of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Very soon, apart from the provincial city, not a single piece of land belonged to the Pingtian Empire anymore. Heavenly Moon Empire, you traitors, I curse you to suffer a horrible fate. And the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds is there as well. We should have suggested the Patriarch to destroy you back then. We never thought the Patriarch's mercy would actually lead to such a great problem. A series of curses rang out from the Tianyuan clan. Many of the important members stared at the two ancestors of the Heavenly Moon Empire and the ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds in fury, swearing out loud. Even many of the guards took part. Many of them found the Heavenly Moon Empire's actions extremely despicable. Keep swearing, keep swearing. Swear as much as you want while you can still talk, as you won't even have the right to talk a while later. The dead can't speak. The glory of the Tianyuan clan will become history, the ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds said coldly. Tianyuan clan, you never thought today would come, did you? Our chance to avenge our ancestor has finally arrived. Some God King elders from the Earth Spirit sect called out in glee. After the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, Sang Tu, was killed by Jianqin, the Earth Spirit sect lost their only primordial realm expert. It immediately made their status plummet, so the Earth Spirit sect held a bone-deep hatred towards the Tianyuan clan. Within the Tianyuan clan, Shiyu silently clenched her hands when she heard the cold remarks from the ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds. She ground her teeth and said, Heavenly Moon Empire, Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, and the Earth Spirit sect, if the Tianyuan clan survives this, I swear I will never spare you. Suddenly, a huge crack was ripped open in the formation around the provincial city. Immediately, a violent ripple of energy swept in through the crack like a storm, suddenly exploding in the city. Immediately, many cultivators in the city were affected. The storm caused many of the weaker cultivators to directly lose their lives. Even the nearby structures all collapsed. The formation around the city is about to fall. Su Ran looked at the crowds of people outside grimly as she controlled the formation. Once the formation fell, all the cultivators who had fled into the provincial city would be doomed without a single doubt. After all, only a tiny fraction of them were God Kings. Against so many infinite primes and the shockwaves of energy from 3 chaotic primes, there was basically nothing that they could do against it. I've already done all that I can. Your final fate will be up to yourselves, Su Ran thought. She was powerless now because even the Tianyuan clan was struggling to protect itself. Since the formation will fall, I better kill some traitors before it does. Cold killing intent flashed through Su Ran's eyes. She suddenly vanished, and in the next moment, she had appeared outside the formation. It was extremely sudden. The storms of energy from the attacks of the primordial realm experts made the space there constantly shake as the cracks expanded. If the provincial city was the calm ocean floor, then this was the turbulent surface. Su Ran stood still in the air. No matter how violent the energy was, as soon as it approached her, it would be blocked by a mysterious power. Her eyes directly locked onto the ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, Shengping, and the 2 ancestral emperors of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Be careful! A chaotic prime called out from beside the young Star Lord. Even though Su Ran had appeared silently, his cultivation was clearly greater than Su Ran's, so he immediately discovered her and raised his guard. Afterwards, Su Ran moved. The distance between them was under 20 kilometers, so it only took a step to cross for a chaotic prime like her. With a single flash, she immediately appeared before the ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds. She suddenly extended her old hand, piercing through Shengping's barrier of energy like it was paper and directly clamped down on his neck. The difference in cultivation was far too great. Shengping felt his neck tighten before he could even understand what was going on. He suddenly felt that he was suffocating. Even though he did not need to breathe, the feeling made his face change drastically as his eyes became filled with fear. Only then did he discover that Su Ran had appeared before him, staring at him coldly and mercilessly. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. At the same time, 2 of the 3 chaotic primes that the young Star Lord had brought rushed toward Su Ran. The third person was responsible for the young Star Lord's safety. Chapter 2634. The Fall of the Provincial City? Save me, the ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds, Shengping, could only choke out a few words hoarsely with great difficulty as Su Ran's hand wrapped around his neck. He stared at her old face and gray hair as he felt fear towards death, along with a slight unwillingness to accept this. He was unwilling to accept the fact that he would die before he could personally destroy the Tianyuan clan. However, there was nothing he could do before the great strength of Su Ran. Although he was a primordial realm expert, he was as weak as an ant before her. Blood sprayed out as Su Ran crushed Xingping's head, dispersing his soul. The ancestor of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds had died. The two chaotic primes who had gone to pin down Su Ran did not even glance at Xingping. They were indifferent. They only saw Su Ran. Xingping's death was nothing important to them. They arrived before Su Ran very soon. Their energy erupted like a tidal wave as the laws of the world danced. They used their full strength right from the start. The two of them were not weak. They were both fifth heavenly layer chaotic primes, the same as Su Ran. The Four Symbols Alliance happened to be in need of people while they tried to destroy the Righteous Alliance, so they only sent 3 chaotic primes to assist the young Star Lord. 2 of them were at the 5th heavenly layer, while the other one was at the 6th heavenly layer. They did not plan to try and kill Su Ran. They only wanted to keep her busy momentarily. Once the Four Symbols Alliance emerged victorious, it was impossible for a 5th heavenly layer chaotic prime to make any difference no matter how powerful she was before a grand prime. Piss off! Su Ran called out. She did not use any battle skills, nor did she use any secret techniques. She simply sent out 2 palm strikes and energy erupted. They contained the truths of the world as her hands shot towards the 2 chaotic primes steadily. Boom! Boom! With 2 deafening rumbles, the attacks from the 2 chaotic primes who were at the same level as Su Ran were easily nullified. Her palm strikes still had not run out of power, continuing on to collide with their energy barriers. She forced the 2 of them back. The expressions of the 2 chaotic primes changed. They glanced at each other and could see how stern the other was. They were all 5th heavenly layer chaotic primes, but Su Ran was clearly much more powerful than them. This blasted old woman's cultivation has risen once again. At this rate, she'll break through before long, the chaotic prime who protected the young Star Lord, Lin Fei, called out. His eyes were slightly sunken. Out of the 3 chaotic primes allocated to the young Star Lord this time, Lin Fei was the most powerful. He was a 6th heavenly layer chaotic prime. Su Ran moved. She immediately vanished, and when she reappeared, she had arrived before an infinite prime ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire several dozen kilometers away. She struck out viciously. There was not a single infinite prime who could fight back against Su Ran, who could even overwhelm experts at the same level as her. Immediately, the infinite prime also died to Su Ran's hands, suffering the same fate as Xingping. It was also at this moment that a crack suddenly appeared. The formation around the provincial city had finally fallen, and the countless cultivators inside were directly exposed. Without the protection of the barrier, the energy in the air immediately surged down. The powerful shockwaves swept through all the structures in the city like it was unstoppable. Many buildings and stores were ripped to pieces by the shockwaves. It was not just the structures. Even the many cultivators in the city were like ants. They were either blown away by the shockwaves, spraying blood along the way, or they were directly torn to shreds. There were heavy casualties. In just a few seconds, basically the entire provincial city was flattened, reduced to ruins. Only the final layer of formations around the Tianyuan clan remained intact. We already attacked the Tianyuan clan. You said you would spare us? For Symbols Alliance, you are untrustworthy. You go back on your words. A few cultivators roared out angrily within the city, along with many miserable cries. The cultivators that managed to survive scrambled away desperately, fleeing in all directions. The fear for death enveloped the entire place. The young Star Lord hovered high in the air. He stared at the ruined city in satisfaction, ignoring the cries of the cultivators. He sniggered and said, "Jian Chen, your Tianyuan clan can't last much longer. It's just a pity that you probably won't be able to witness the destruction of your clan. That's the greatest pity to me. But we need to deal with that old woman from the Tianyuan clan as soon as possible, as she's pinning down 2 of my people. She'll get directly in the way of destroying the Tianyuan clan," murmured the young Star Lord. Afterwards, he said to Lin Fei, You go as well. The three of you should be able to kill that old woman if you work together. Young Star-Lord, your safety. Lin Fei became rather troubled as he was responsible for protecting the young Star-Lord. The young Star-Lord took out the life-bound plume he had received from the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance and said, I have a way to protect myself. Don't worry. Lin Fei glanced past the feather in the young Star-Lord's hands and hesitates slightly. In the end, he nodded. All right then. It's just that Su Ran is far too powerful. She can challenge those at higher cultivations than herself. Even if I join in, we'll probably only be able to pin her down. Killing her will be extremely difficult. However, I do have a way of trapping her. Lin Fei stared at Su Ran from a distance. Even though Su Ran's cultivation was below his, Lin Fei felt extremely pressured. He was grim. The heavens shine and the earth reflect, 8 poles of blood. Suddenly, Lin Fei called out. He formed a seal with both hands and used a secret technique. Immediately, powerful vital energy radiated from his body. They flared up like they were on fire as a dense mist of blood enveloped Lin Fei completely. Through the mist, Lin Fei's face rapidly paled and became haggard. This was because he was rapidly burning his essence blood along with his vital energies. He was paying a huge price to use an ancient and powerful secret technique. Seal! Lin Fei called out from the mist of blood. His voice was filled with feebleness as if the secret technique had drained all his power in such a short amount of time. As he called out, 8 blood-red pillars suddenly appeared around Su Ran. Every single pillar was completely red. It was like they were completely condensed from blood. The 8 pillars stood in a formation, isolating the space there and sealing in Su Ran. Immediately, Su Ran vanished before everyone. The space where she previously stood was replaced by red light. It was vague and hazy as if she was no longer in this world. Her battle prowess is very great. I can't keep her sealed for too long. It can only last for 3 days. Lin Fei let out a breath of relief as he said haggardly to the other two. He had to pay quite the price to use this secret technique. Chapter 2635. The Blue Sky Venerable, thank you for saving me, Senior Lin. The other ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire arrived before Lin Fei and said gratefully. He knew that if Su Ran had not been trapped, he could be her next target. He could clearly sense the chilling killing intent. Now that Lin Fei had trapped Su Ran, it was equivalent to saving his life. After that, the ancestor's face immediately became filled with killing intent. He called out, Soldiers of the Heavenly Moon Empire, douse the Dong'an province with blood. Disciples of the Earth Spirit sect, cover the Dong'an province with blood. Massacre them all, yes. Hold a bloodbath in the Dong'an province. Avenge the ancestor. Destroy the Tian Yuan clan and avenge the ancestor. After the ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire gave his command, a respected God King Elder of the Earth Spirit sect followed up with an order. Immediately, cries for the destruction of the provincial city and the Tian Yuan clan rose up everywhere. At the same time, in a region of space extremely distant from the cloud plain, the Rain Abbess used her way of rain to suppress Gongsun Ji within the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rain Flood. The rain water formed a ball around Gongsun Ji, keeping him trapped. The ball of water seemed to be corrosive, gnawing away at Gongsun Ji's protective light bit by bit. By now, the protective light around Gongsun Ji had been reduced to 2/3 of its original thickness. The protective light was slowly falling to the Rain Abbess. The mountain soul hovered nearby. All the members of the martial soul lineage stood on it as they watched the Rain Abbess and Gongsun Ji. They were puzzled. All of them had seen it from the battle prior, including the Rain Abbess actions of stopping Huangfu Gi, Su Jiping and Sha Yun, that the Rain Abbess had come to save them. However, as far as they could remember, none of them apart from Jian Chen had even met the Rain Abbess before. Among the 7 of them, Hun Zhang's body had been reconnected. He currently sat there with his eyes closed. The powder of pills had been sprinkled on him. The powder fused into his body at a visible rate, allowing his wound to rapidly heal. Very soon, it returned to its previous state. However, only the surface had recovered. His injuries were still very severe. Even with impressive God-tier healing pills, it would take him quite some time to make a full recovery. As Han Zhang's last wound closed up, he finally opened his eyes. His eyes were slightly dim, and they possessed an evident smear of frailness. He stood up and stared deeply in the direction of the Rain Abyss and Gong Sunji. He said sternly, "The protector swords of the Radiant Saint Hall are too powerful. After all these years of existing in the Saint's world, our martial soul lineage has finally encountered our arch-nemesis. First senior brother, don't be dejected. The Radiant Saint Hall has their protector swords, but our martial soul lineage has the Martial Soul Mountain," said Yun Ziding. The Martial Soul Mountain was what the martial soul lineage depended on the most. Our martial soul lineage has already gained 8 successors. We only need one more to reach 9. According to the ancient records, once we reach 9 successors, we will experience unprecedented glory, enough to enter the annals of history. Let alone those protector swords, even if the Radiant Saint Hall gains a grand exalt, we will still be able to fend them off, said Su Qi. Han Zhang nodded. He agreed with Su Qi very much. However, he also understood that it was already extremely rare for there to be 8 successors of the martial soul lineage. Having 9 appear at the same time had only happened once in the lengthy history of the martial soul lineage. Su Zhiping and Hong Fugi have already gotten heavily injured by the Rain Abyss. Their battle prowess have weakened. Should we kill them both in a single stroke? Qin Shan said. He coldly stared at the 2 people who no longer dared to fight the Rain Abyss. Killing intent filled him. We've already depleted half of the power of our souls. Our battle prowess has been affected as well. If Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi work together, we can probably only match them at most in our current state. Killing them will be very difficult, Han Zhang said powerlessly. However, Jian Chen's mind was not on Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi at all. He stared at the formation of clouds urge and rain flood around him and said sternly, "We need to find a way out. Without our support, the situation on the cloud plain will be extremely dangerous." In Jian Chen's heart, Su Zhiping, Huang Fugi, and Gong Sunji were all secondary. What he truly worried about was the Tianyuan clan. The cloud plain does indeed need us, or the Righteous Alliance can't defeat the Four Symbols Alliance with what they possess alone, said Han Zhang. He looked around and studied the formation for a while before saying slowly, "Prepare to control the mountain soul. I might have a way out." "What? First senior brother, you said you might have a way out?" Han Zhang surprised the other 7 members of the martial soul lineage with that. They had all witnessed the power of the formation of clouds urge and rain flood. Even experts like Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi could only remain trapped within obediently, yet Han Zhang, who was weaker than them in cultivation, had a way out. They would naturally be extremely surprised. "I'm not certain, but it's worth a try. Alright, let's stop talking. The situation is urgent right now. Let's move immediately," Han Zhang said sternly before immediately moving the mountain soul with everyone else. As the mountain soul rapidly moved towards the edge of the formation, Qin Shan could not help but glance at the Rain Abyss. He felt rather unsettled as he muttered, "The Rain Abyss is still here. Without her permission, can we leave silently like this?" Jian Chen said nothing. He also looked at Rain Abyss as she dealt with Godslayer's sword. The light in his eyes flickered. "Brother Su, look at the martial soul lineage. What are they doing?" Huang Fugi noticed the movements of the martial soul lineage and asked out of confusion. Su Zhiping also looked over. He was in doubt and said, "They're approaching the boundary of the formation. Are they trying to leave? That's impossible. The formation of clouds urge and rain flood is an extremely famous formation of the Rain Abyss. It's earth-shakingly powerful. Even with the unique methods of the martial soul lineage, it's impossible for them to pass through such a great formation, unless the Rain Abyss lets them leave." A gleam of light flickered through Huang Fugi's eyes. He looked into Su Zhiping's eyes and asked secretly, "Should we follow them?" Boom. However, a deafening rumble rang out all of a sudden. The entire formation shook violently. It was unstable. Huang Fugi and Su Zhiping were both surprised. As they watched the formation shake, they beamed. There's someone outside attacking the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rainflood. He can actually shake up the formation, so he's definitely much more powerful than the two of us. The sixth heavenly layer. This is definitely the ability of a sixth heavenly layer expert. Su Jiping and Huang Fugi were overjoyed. A cold light flashed through the Rain Abbess' eyes as she dealt with Godslayer's sword. She called out coldly, "Blue Sky Venerable, do you plan on becoming my enemy by attacking my formation?" The Rain Abbess did not speak loudly, but it rang through the entire space there. "Ah, Rain Abbess, I have no interest in becoming your enemy, but I did hear that you have something called Water Cloud Iron on you. I just happen to be in desperate need of that, which was why I've specially come for it. If the Abbess hands it over, I'll leave immediately." An old voice boomed out from outside the formation. Chapter 2636, The Rain Abbess Killing Intent. The Water Cloud Iron is extremely rare in the Saints' world. Its value is immeasurable. Blue Sky Venerable, do you think I'll just give it to you? The Rain Abbess sneer rang out from inside the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rainflood. Haha, it's exactly because Water Cloud Iron is far too rare and far too precious that I can't find something of equal value to exchange for it. Moreover, I heard the Abbess has many treasures and is very wealthy. Although I have managed to accumulate a little over the years, it's nowhere close to the Abbess collection. It'll probably be very difficult for me to take out anything that interests the Abbess, so I might as well just owe the Abbess a favor. As long as the Abbess gives the Water Cloud Iron to me, I'll leave immediately whilst owing the Abbess a favor. The Blue Sky Venerable laughed aloud. He stood outside the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rainflood with his hands behind his back as his tremendous presence as a sixth heavenly layer Grand Prime crushed forward. Under the pressure of his presence, the formation immediately began to flicker. The Blue Sky Venerable clearly realized the Rain Abbess was facing a powerful opponent, so she could not be distracted. As such, he decided to try and make the Rain Abbess hand over the Water Cloud Iron in a threatening manner. As the Lord of Planet Wando, the Blue Sky Venerable was forceful with all his actions. He did not fear the Rain Abbess at all. Moreover, the Water Cloud Iron really was extremely precious like the Rain Abbess had described it to be. If the Blue Sky Venerable really were to exchange for it, he would have to pay quite the price. Moreover, he just happened to come across the Rain Abbess while she was locked in combat with a powerful opponent. This was an opportunity for him. As a result, he wanted to take the Water Cloud Iron from the Rain Abbess without paying the slightest of price at all. As for the favor he promised, he believed that as long as he did not get in the Rain Abbess' way, it would be returning the favor. A favor from you? Blue Sky Venerable, you overestimate yourself. A favor from you isn't even worth 1/10,000th of the Water Cloud Iron in my eyes. Piss off and I'll forget about what you did earlier, or don't blame me for showing no mercy, the Rain Abbess said coldly. She was brimming with killing intent, leaving no room for negotiation. Rain Abbess, you're only at the 5th heavenly layer. Even if you're very powerful and can barely fight against those at the 6th heavenly layer, that doesn't mean you're my opponent. I haven't spent all those years in control of Planet Wando for nothing. Show me whether your mercilessness can do anything to me today. The Blue Sky Venerable's face sank, and he snorted coldly. Energy erupted from his body, and he directly struck his hand towards the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rainflood. With a palm strike, the world immediately darkened. All the stars vanished, and the space where the Blue Sky Venerable stood shattered from the power in the strike. Across the entire Saints' world, 6th heavenly layer Grand Primes were supreme experts who stood at the apex. Even across all the ancient organizations that had existed for who knows how long, there would only be a handful of them. Every single one of them was an ancient existence who could control the fate of their entire organization, able to annihilate the stars with a single gesture. They were extremely terrifying. Boom! With a great rumble, the Blue Sky Venerable's devastating palm strike landed mercilessly on the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rainflood. It made the formation shake violently. A few cracks even appeared. Haha, this formation of Cloud's Urge and Rainflood is nothing special. I only used a single attack, yet it almost collapsed. I'll destroy your formation with my next strike. Rain Abyss, changing your mind right now isn't too late. The blue sky venerable laughed aloud. He formed a seal with both hands, and a huge planet gradually condensed above him. The planet was tens of thousand meters wide. Mountains and rivers could clearly be seen on it. It seemed extremely realistic. If someone familiar with Planet Wando was present, they would discover that the planet seemed exactly the same. The only difference was its size. It was a shrunken version of Planet Wando. Afterwards, the planet rapidly began to shrink. It went from tens of thousand meters wide to thousands of meters wide, then to hundreds of meters wide. However, as the planet shrank, the terrifying energy inside it strengthened. When it was around 300 meters across, the energy had been compressed to an utterly terrifying level. Just the pulses it gave off were enough to crack space. It was extremely astonishing. Rain Abyss, it looks like you plan to adhere to your foolish ways. Whatever, I'll just destroy your formation of Cloud's Urge and Rain Flood, said the blue sky venerable before suddenly extending a finger. Immediately, the shrunken planet above his head flew out. As a streak of light, it hurtled towards the formation with terrifying speed. With an earth-shattering boom, a huge hole was torn open in the formation after the collision with the planet. The powerful, lingering energy from the planet began to spread out in all directions. Wherever it passed by, the formation collapsed. The formation of Cloud's Urge and Rain Flood had caved in as a result of the blue sky venerable's attack. Moreover, after the shrunken planet destroyed the formation, it did not disperse. Instead, the residual power continued onwards, shooting directly towards the Rain Abyss with lightning speed. Blue sky venerable, you seek death. The Rain Abyss' frigid voice rang out. In the next moment, her killing intent became so powerful that it caused space to freeze up and everything to fall silent. She had already gained the upper hand in her clash with Godslayer's sword. It was only a matter of time before she completely finished it off, yet the blue sky venerable had come to interfere at such a crucial time, rendering all her past efforts null. This made her extremely furious, such that her killing intent towards the blue sky venerable rose to an unprecedented level. The ball of water that flooded the protective light suddenly vanished. The Rain Abyss had recalled all her power. Afterwards, with a wave of her hand, endless amounts of rainwater gathered together, condensing into a sky-blue sword. It shot towards the shrunken planet with a flash. My secret technique is anything but ordinary. Even if it has been slightly depleted from getting through your formation, you won't be able to receive it so easily. The sir who was trapped in the formation before, your time for revenge has come. The blue sky venerable laughed relaxedly and gleefully. There was some contempt in his laughter. He had heard of the Rain Abyss before. She was only a 5th heavenly layer Grand Prime. No matter how powerful she was, even if she could put up a fight against a 6th heavenly layer Grand Prime, she was still lacking if she wanted to stand up to him. However, in the next moment, the blue sky venerable's laughter stopped. His eyes suddenly narrowed. He was shocked. The planet he had conjured up with his secret technique was actually cut into two by the Rain Abyss water sword. The sword continued onwards, traveling right towards him with the presence of the Way of Rain. The blue sky venerable discovered an extremely rare sense of threat from the sword. I underestimated you, the blue sky venerable called out and became slightly more serious. With a wave of his hand, he drew a duster and swung it towards the incoming sword. The sword shattered upon collision, completely collapsing against the blue sky venerable's weapon. It returned to a ball of mist that permeated the surroundings. The mist was filled with a dense and pure presence of the Way of Rain. The laws of the world seemed to appear within it. Suddenly, the mist started to freeze. It swept through outer space with an indescribable coldness, immediately beginning to freeze up a range of 1,000,000 kilometers around the blue sky venerable. The blue sky venerable suddenly stiffened. A bone-piercing coldness infiltrated his body, causing his blood to stop flowing in an instant. The coldness continued to spread in an attempt to freeze up his cultivation and soul. Chapter 2637. True Strength. At the same time, A thick layer of ice appeared around the Blue Sky Venerable. He seemed like he had been sealed up in ice. The Blue Sky Venerable was surprised. Disbelief filled his face. He would have never thought the Rain Abbess would be so powerful. She was strong to the point where he lost the upper hand as soon as they began fighting. He struggled to accept it. However, the Blue Sky Venerable finally understood the Rain Abbess' strength after this clash. He no longer dared to hold back. He immediately bellowed out, and his supreme cultivation as a sixth heavenly layer Grand Prime erupted completely. Terrifying energy formed a destructive storm around him, immediately shattering the ice to pieces. Afterwards, he clenched his hand into a fist. His presence increased as all his vital energies rose to his limit. After that, he threw out a punch. The punch contained his vital energies. Its might was astonishing, gushing through the galaxies and making them tremble. At the same time, the punch was filled with a presence like it wanted to defy heaven, as if it were not afraid of doing anything. This was an extremely powerful God-tier battle skill that the Blue Sky Venerable had grasped, the Punch of Heaven's Defiance. With this battle skill, the Blue Sky Venerable was able to rank towards the top among all sixth heavenly layer Grand Primes. This was because the battle skill was an extremely straightforward and powerful attack. The punch was all-powerful, where even other experts at the sixth heavenly layer would struggle to receive it. The Blue Sky Venerable had great confidence in his Punch of Heaven's Defiance. Even if the Rain Abbess was unexpectedly powerful, it would not be easy for her to block his punch. However, as he had come for the Water Cloud Iron and not just to fight the Rain Abbess, he secretly contacted Gong Sun Ji. He wanted to get him to attack as well when he punched out. Only when they worked together would the Rain Abbess be heavily injured in the shortest amount of time possible, allowing him to obtain the Water Cloud Iron. The Rain Abbess' eyes were utterly cold as she stood in the power of rain and clouds. Her robes buffeted wildly as her hair danced about. Even without the support from the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rain Flood, she felt no fear as she faced the Blue Sky Venerable. There was just chilling killing intent. 3 fingernail-sized fish scales suddenly appeared on her snow-white neck. Every single scale possessed a profound patterning of the ways, and they were all pressed tightly against her skin like a birthmark. The 3 scales were the same in size. They seemed exactly the same, apart from being golden, silver, and bronze in color. At this moment, the bronze scale suddenly vanished. As the scale vanished, the Rain Abbess seemed to burst through some form of shackling. Her presence suddenly erupted, and she broke through the limits of her current cultivation in an instant to reach an even higher level. It was not just her presence. Even her cultivation and comprehension rose alongside her presence. Afterwards, she turned into a streak of blue light, piercing through space like a sharp blade and colliding with the Blue Sky Venerable's punch. Boom! The collision erupted with a deafening rumble. The punch that the Blue Sky Venerable had extremely great confidence in shattered. The Rain Abbess seemingly destroyed it effortlessly. The Rain Abbess continued onwards. She shone with a water-blue light as she charged through the storm of energy from the collision, arriving before the Blue Sky Venerable in an instant. She struck out swiftly with her hand, shattering the layers of energy around the Blue Sky Venerable. Her hand landed on his armor under the Blue Sky Venerable's dumbfounded gaze. Immediately, the god artifact dimmed. A clear imprint appeared on it. Terrifying energy surged from the Rain Abbess' hand, immediately sending the Blue Sky Venerable flying. The Blue Sky Venerable stabilized himself 100 kilometers away. His presence was rather chaotic as he stared right at the Rain Abbess with widened eyes. Disbelief filled his face. The 6th heavenly layer. You've actually reached the 6th heavenly layer. I never thought you would have had your cultivation sealed up the entire time. The Blue Sky Venerable's expression became rather ugly. There was a sliver of shock. He had never thought that the Rain Abbess would have hidden her strength so much. Nor had he thought the Rain Abbess battle prowess would increase to such a terrifying level after reaching the 6th heavenly layer. When she was at the 5th heavenly layer, she could already put up a fight against 6th heavenly layer experts. Now that she had reached the 6th heavenly layer, she would naturally become even more terrifying. It made the Blue Sky Venerable's heart sink. He sensed that the situation was bad. Watercloud iron was very precious, but offending an expert like this over a piece of it was no longer a matter of being a smart decision or not. Instead, he was looking to die. The Blue Sky Venerable became filled with regret. If he had known that the Rain Abbess had sealed up her cultivation, he would have never dared to provoke her. After understanding that it would be very difficult for him to defeat the Rain Abbess, the Blue Sky Venerable could only look towards Gongsun Ji, hoping that he would work with him. However, Gongsun Ji did not even glance at him. He had already developed fear towards the Rain Abbess after the encounter earlier, as this was the first time he had come across someone who could match or even suppress Godslayer's sword since he obtained it. As a result, even if Gongsun Ji was 100 times bolder, he dared not provoke the Rain Abbess anymore. Now that the Rain Abbess is busy with the Blue Sky Venerable, she doesn't have the time to deal with me. I can destroy the martial soul lineage during this time. After that, I will immediately return to the Radiant Saint Hall. Once I get back, I'll be safe. Even if the Rain Abbess comes to the desolate plain, there will be nothing that she can do to me. Xianzhan is in the Radiant Saint Hall. His protector sword is even more powerful in his hands with his cultivation on par with 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes. He should be able to stop the Rain Abbess. Even if Xianzhan can't stop her, there's the other protectors as well. Although they're always opposing me, protecting the Radiant Saint Hall is their mission. Gongsun Ji looked at the martial soul mountain that rapidly flew off, and killing intent filled his eyes. Senior Su, Senior Huangfu, immediately help me stop the martial soul mountain. Now that the Rain Abbess is gone, it's the perfect opportunity to destroy the martial soul lineage. Gongsun Ji called Su Jiping and Huangfu Gi before immediately pursuing the mountain soul. Leader, there is nothing that we can do. Farewell. Su Jiping and Huangfu Gi had witnessed Sha Yun's fate. How could the two of them be bold enough to continue attacking the martial soul lineage? After throwing that out there, they fled as quickly as they could in fear. They did not dare to stay for even a moment longer. Gongsun Ji did not understand the battle between the Rain Abbess and the Blue Sky Venerable, but the two of them understood it perfectly. They had already developed fear towards the Rain Abbess. Su Jiping and Huangfu Gi's retreat immediately infuriated Gongsun Ji. He glanced in their direction resentfully and remembered their actions. However, as soon as they left, Sha Yun, who had been lying there quietly, finally recovered. When he opened his eyes, his bloodshot eyes were slightly lost. Chapter 2638. Instant death for Sha Yun. After he was struck by that bolt of lightning, not only did he become completely numb, but even his mind fell into chaos. Now that he had finally awakened, he had no idea what had happened while he was unconscious. Sha Yun looked around. He naturally saw the Blue Sky Venerable who had suddenly appeared. Even though he was in doubt, what he truly cared about was not the Blue Sky Venerable. He turned around and asked Gongsun Ji, "Leader, where is Su Jiping and Huangfu Gi? Where did they go?" "Senior Sha Yun, you've awakened at the perfect time. Don't pay attention to them for now. We've gained a rare opportunity. Go stop the martial soul lineage from running away." Gongsun Ji beamed and immediately called out. Su Jiping and Huangfu Gi's disappearance allowed Sha Yun to sense that something was off. However, as he watched the mountain's soul gradually travel further away, he did not think too much about it. He immediately pursued with his blade. "I spare you time and time again, yet you are so dim-witted. You can go die now." At this moment, the Rain Abbess' cold voice rang out. In the next moment, the space before Sha Yun was suddenly ripped open, forming a gate. Sha Yun directly rushed into it, as he was caught off guard. However, when he emerged, he seemed to have crossed through space. He had immediately traveled several thousand kilometers to appear beside the Rain Abbess. At the same time, a slender hand slammed toward Sha Yun's head with an indescribable pressure. Before the hand had even arrived, space was compressed. The hand made space seize up and press against Sha Yun from all directions. If it were an infinite prime, they would be crushed to a pulp by the space there. Even weaker chaotic primes would not be able to avoid death. Sha Yun's expression changed drastically. He used his cultivation as a third heavenly layer to forcefully support the space there as he placed his blade before him. Ding! The Rain Abyss hand struck Sha Yun's blade, and a devastating energy immediately surged out. The medium-quality god artifact weapon broke with the sound. The hand continued onwards and landed on Sha Yun's head in the end. Sha Yun's body suddenly stiffened, and in the next moment, he became completely powerless. The light in his eyes rapidly dimmed, becoming hollow and dull. The ancestor of the Divine Blade sect, an expert only a step away from the fourth heavenly layer of Grand Prime, had died. Killing Sha Yun seemed to be a task of no significance to the Rain Abyss. She did not even glance at Sha Yun's corpse, as if third heavenly layer Grand Primes could not interest her at all. It was like they were unworthy of her attention. The Rain Abyss had grasped the laws of space, so the concept of distance did not exist in her eyes. She suddenly vanished, and when she appeared again, she seemingly teleported before Gong Sun Ji. Her eyes were completely frigid. God damn it, there's such a powerful opponent present, so why is she coming to deal with me? Why does she always oppose me? Gong Sunji swore inside when he saw the Rain Abyss suddenly appear before him. He was afraid of her from the bottom of his heart. The only thing that brought him peace was that even though the Rain Abyss could deal with Godslayer's sword, it would take her some time. And now that a powerful opponent, the Blue Sky Venerable, was present, the Rain Abyss clearly could not spread her attention. I'll endure using the protective light from Godslayer's sword. As long as the Blue Sky Venerable makes it over here, the Rain Abyss won't have the power to deal with me, thought Gong Sun Ji. His cultivation was far too low, nowhere close to being enough for him to see the details of their battle. He subconsciously believed that the Blue Sky Venerable was stronger than the Rain Abyss. That was because in a few attacks, the Blue Sky Venerable had destroyed the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rain Flood, something that Su Jiping and Huangfu Yi could do nothing about. From that, Gong Sun Ji sensed that the Blue Sky Venerable's strength was extremely terrifying. However, matters did not develop as Gong Sun Ji imagined. The Rain Abyss gently waved her hand at Gong Sun Ji, and in the next moment, powerful pulses of the laws of space appeared around him. Gong Sun Ji, along with the Protector Sword, vanished under the pulses of space. In an extremely distant place from the cloud plane, countless shattered meteors of various sizes floated. Violent streams of energy filled the desolate sea of stars. At this moment, there was a pulse of space, and Gong Sun Ji appeared there while being wrapped up in his protective light. He studied the surroundings in bewilderment. Where's this? Where's the cloud plane? Where's the martial soul mountain? Where's the Rain Abyss? Why have they all vanished? Gong Sun Ji murmured as he felt lost. Suddenly, a great beast's roar, enough to rip souls apart, rang out. The terrifying sound waves caused the space there to ripple. The sea of stars suddenly began to tremble violently. Countless meteors exploded and shot off as streaks of light. Gong Sun Ji leapt in fright from the suddenness of all this. He turned around in some fear, and with that, his eyes immediately narrowed to the size of pins. He paled. What he saw was a colossal elephant. It gave off a brutal presence, making the sea of stars tremble as space twisted. It was simply far too large. Its body was equivalent to the surface of an entire region on the cloud plane. It was large to an astonishing level. Gong Sun Ji paled in fright. He had heard of space beasts before, and he had seen some prior to this. However, he had never seen such a large one. Moreover, the vital energy that the space beast gave off made his mind tremble. Even with the protection of Godslayer's sword, he could not help but experience fear from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, the elephant-like space beast produced a violent hiss. Its long nose swept out, ripping through space and crushing countless meteors. It swung towards Gong Sun Ji with astonishing power. Most space beasts possessed low intelligence and were fiercely territorial. They would kill all living things that intruded upon their territory. Gong Sun Ji had clearly intruded upon its territory, so he faced its merciless attacks. It was not just a sovereign-level space beast, but one that would be considered powerful among all sovereign-level space beasts. The Lord of Planet Wando, the the blue sky venerable, had already vanished from near the cloud plain. Who knows where he went? He had taken advantage of when the Rain Abbess dealt with Sha Yun and Gong Sun Ji to secretly flee. In such a short amount of time, he had already departed from the area near the cloud plain, vanishing into the depths of the stars. I never thought the Rain Abbess would actually be hiding such strength. I'm in trouble now. Not only did I fail to get my hands on the water cloud iron, but I've even offended such a powerful expert. The blue sky venerable fled quickly through the sea of stars. He moved so quickly that the stars around him drifted back as streaks of light. However, he had already become filled with regret. If I had known this earlier, I would have given up every penny in my possession just to exchange with her. I would never have tried to take it forcefully. 9 brilliant Star Lord, you've screwed me over this time, the blue sky venerable grumbled inside. He felt a headache whenever he thought of the Rain Abbess' cold killing intent. He knew that he had probably gotten in the way of the Rain Abbess with the interference. He had made her develop a grudge towards him. Suddenly, the blue sky venerable's face suddenly changed. He came to a halt as his expression became utterly horrified. A weak pulse in space appeared thousands of meters away from him, along with the dense power of rain and clouds. The Rain Abbess figure appeared before the blue sky venerable like a ghost. She just happened to be in his way. Do you think you can run from me? Said the Rain Abbess coldly with killing intent. The blue sky venerable's heart completely sank. Chapter 2639. Hope with the Rain Abbess, the blue sky venerable, Gong Sun Ji, Su Jiping, and Huang Fugi's disappearance. The space that constantly shattered from their fighting finally gained some peace. The energy that swept through outer space gradually settled down, and the cracked space rapidly closed up. Very soon, the dark, cold space recovered its previous peace. The twinkling stars formed a beautiful scenery. It was enchanting. The mountain soul quickly drifted through outer space like a ghost. It rapidly approached the cloud plain. On the mountain soul, Chu Jian, Yu Chao, Yun Ziding, and Su Qi all looked in the direction of the Rain Abbess and the blue sky venerable's previous battle. They were all silent, and they were filled with many doubts. They were chaotic primes, so both their vision and senses were extremely powerful. They all saw how Sha Yun and Gong Sun Ji wanted to deal with them while the Rain Abbess was fighting against the blue sky venerable. Subsequently, the Rain Abbess abandoned her opponent without any hesitation to deal with Gong Sun Ji and Sha Yun. It was like she was afraid of something happening to the martial soul lineage. They felt extremely puzzled over why the Rain Abbess cared for their martial soul lineage so much. Based on their impression, their martial soul lineage had never had any prior contact with the Rain Abbess. They did not even have any connections with her. Jian Chun was filled with doubts as well. After seeing this, he could not help but think about when he attacked the Cloud's Urge Empire with the Empyrean demon cult. In the end, he was trapped in the formation of Cloud's Urge and Rain Flood. That time, he and the Grand Elder of the Empyrean demon cult, Qing Ming, took away the innate orchid of 5 elements that the Rain Abbess had planted where she cultivated. Afterwards, he attempted to devour the spatial insect emperor, which led to an accident. He almost died and ended up in the hands of the Rain Abbess. The Rain Abbess did not blame him at all. Instead, she bestowed a fortune upon him, assisting him in refining the soul from the spatial insect emperor. As a result, he gained its comprehension of the laws of space. All of this happened because of a mysterious person. Jian Chun was still not certain about this mysterious person's identity. However, he could tell from his conversation with the Rain Abbess and her actions that this mysterious person was related to the martial soul lineage. Moreover, it was also because of him that the Rain Abbess took special care of the martial soul lineage. This care was far, far greater than the precious innate orchid of 5 elements. At this moment, Han Zong returned to the mountain soul with Sha Yun's corpse. He tossed the corpse to Jian Chen's side. The people of the martial soul lineage all became rather quiet as they looked at Sha Yun's corpse. He was an expert only a step away from the 4th heavenly layer of Grand Prime. Who knows how much more powerful he was than the Grand Primes from the cloud plane that they had killed? In the end, Sha Yun's corpse entered Jian Chen's hands. It would act as nourishment for the immortal devouring orchid in the future. However, Jian Chen did not take a single thing from Sha Yun's space ring. The mountain soul moved through space with great speed. The cloud plane grew larger and larger as it hung in outer space. At the same time, in another region of outer space near the cloud plane, the Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance were locked in battle against Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, Zhou Jidao, and the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Their battle was extremely intense. The four experts of the Righteous Alliance completely lost the upper hand as they faced the combined efforts of the experts of the Four Symbols Alliance. They were forced into a retreat, covered in blood and heavy wounds. The situation with the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was the most severe. The curse had spread into his bones and now towards his soul. As a result, even his body began to fester, enveloped by the powerful curse. Now, he was burning the flame of his life, pouring all the life in his decaying body into the battle. As his vitality drained away, a heavy presence of death appeared on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Even if he could survive this battle, he probably could not keep his body anymore. However, it was also because of the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's selfless contribution that Tong Wuming, Zhou Jidao, and Lian Wuji were able to fight back against the five experts of the Four Symbols Alliance to a certain degree. I'll keep them busy. You leave first. You still have time ahead of you. As long as you survive, you will be able to rise up once again in the future. The Peak Lord fought against the Gentle Breeze ancestor as he secretly communicated with the three Grand Primes of the Righteous Alliance. They would suffer defeat sooner or later if this continued. If they did not leave, they could end up dying here. In battles between Grand Primes, it was basically impossible for people to keep their opponents trapped if they wanted to leave. Naturally, this was only if the disparity in strength was not overwhelming. Of course, special methods of entrapment were an exception. If I escape, my clan will definitely be destroyed by them. How can I just watch so many of my descendants die to the hands of the Four Symbols Alliance? Tong Wuming replied, "Today, I would rather die in battle than run. Even if I die, I have to drag one of you down with me." Lian Wuji called out. The flames on him suddenly blazed. He truly began to risk his life, burning his essence blood and injuring his vitality without any consideration for the consequences. Perhaps the ancestor of the cosmic sect, Zhou Jidao, had been influenced by Lian Wuji's words, as he immediately made up his mind. He was about to burn his essence blood as well, but at this moment he saw something out of the corner of his eye. He immediately looked over. He immediately ravished with joy with that. It was like he saw hope in the depths of despair. He could not help but call out, "Look! The Martial Soul Mountain. It's the Martial Soul Mountain. The Martial Soul Mountain is coming." Lian Wuji, Tong Wuming, and the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak looked over. As expected, they discovered an illusionary mountain rapidly approach them from the distance. Fantastic! The fellows of the Martial Soul lineage have finally come. As if a huge burden had been relieved from him, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak smiled. He knew that since the Martial Soul lineage had arrived, the outcome of the battle was basically determined settled. "Fellow of the Martial Soul lineage, we're here. Come deal with these bastards," Lian Wuji bellowed out. He was extremely excited, almost to the point where he would dance in joy. "First senior brother, you're still injured, so leave this battle to third junior brother and me," Chu Jian said from the Mountain Soul. "Let's use the Martial Soul Array and end this battle as quickly as possible," suggested Su Qi. She wanted to deal with their opponents in the safest way possible. None of them were at their peak condition anymore. The heaven-severing technique had drained half the power of their soul, so their battle prowess would be influenced to a certain degree. Overexertion of their souls would directly impact their secret techniques that involved martial soul force. Han Zong glanced at the cloud plane and shook his head. 8th Junior Brother's Tian Yuan clan is in danger. We can't use the martial soul array. We need to split up into two groups. 2nd Junior Brother, 3rd Junior Brother, will deal with the Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance. The rest of you, go to the cloud plane. But 1st Senior Brother, your wounds, my wounds aren't a problem. Enough, don't speak anymore. Let's get to action. The people from the Righteous Alliance can't last much longer. Chapter 2640, Death to the Traitors. With that, Han Zong flew off the mountain's soul first, charging right into battle. Chu Jian and Yu Chao could only follow him powerlessly. The three of them were the only ninth heavenly layer chaotic primes of the martial soul lineage, so only they could take part in the battle among grand primes. Oh no, the people of the martial soul lineage are coming. Where are the experts from the desolate plain? Have they all died? No, impossible. The 4 experts from the desolate plain possessed such great cultivation. Even the people at the 4th heavenly layer amounted to 2. It's impossible for such a powerful lineup to all die. As they watched Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao rapidly approach them, Wu Lu, Gong Ji, Chang Feng Yun, and the traitor, He Dao, all became flustered. Their faces became extremely ugly. They felt deep fear towards the martial soul lineage. This fear was not because of their great battle prowess or from how they could challenge those at higher levels of cultivation. Instead, this fear was solely because of the martial soul force that they grasped. There was nothing that they could do to block martial soul force. The attacks would constantly make their souls ache. Even for them, it would be extremely uncomfortable. And that was not even the secret techniques. The secret techniques were even more powerful. Every time they were used, the powerful attack dealt would be enough to stun them momentarily. On battles at such a level, the slightest of carelessness could affect the entire situation. If they became dazed during battle, they would face the possibility of dying. As a result, the peak experts of the 4 Symbols Alliance were unwilling to fight against the martial soul lineage after experiencing their strength. The risk was just far too great. Don't worry. The people of the martial soul lineage just went through a great battle earlier. They're no longer at their peak condition. They aren't as powerful as before, the gentle breeze ancestor called out gruffly. At this moment, he needed to raise their morale. Otherwise, if they became frightened by the martial soul lineage, this final battle that would decide the fate of the 4 Symbols Alliance would be pointless to continue. Fellows of the martial soul lineage, you've come at the perfect time. Go assist Zhou Zhidao and Tong Wuming first. I can still keep the 2 of them busy for a while. Lian Wuji laughed aloud. He had burnt his vitality in exchange for greater strength. The flames roared on him, scorching the space there red as he fought against Wu Lu and Gong Ji. He pinned down 2 grand primes of the 4 Symbols Alliance alone. Of course, the price for doing so was quite great. The 3 of them did not go to assist Lian Wuji. Instead, they rushed straight to Zhou Zhidao and Tong Wuming. The martial soul lineage had joined the battle. Han Zong replaced the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak as the opponent of the Gentle Breeze ancestor. As the strongest person of the 4 Symbols Alliance, only Han Zong would find it slightly easier to deal with him. Chu Jian and Yu Chao assisted Zhou Zhidao and Tong Wuming, keeping Chang Feng Yun and He Dao busy. You seem to be He Dao from the Daoist sect of emergence. You just couldn't stay in the Righteous Alliance, and you just had to run to the other side to oppose 8th junior brother. Look at the fates of the other 2. Not only were their organizations destroyed, but even they themselves died. Was it all worth it? Chu Jian sniggered when he arrived before He Dao. His gaze towards He Dao was like he was looking at a dead man. He Dao's face became extremely sunken. He stared at Chu Jian as the light in his eyes flickered. You shouldn't have achieved an easy victory in the battle before. You must be heavily injured, or you wouldn't waste any words on me. I am a little injured, but I'm still more than enough to deal with a first heavenly layer grand prime like you, said Chu Jian with slight contempt. He directly stabbed out. Martial sword force condensed into a strand of sword chi that stuck to the sword. The moment it came in contact with He Dao, the martial soul force immediately attacked his soul. He Dao's face hardened, and he staggered backwards. The splitting pain from his soul made his face change rapidly. Afterwards, he suddenly gritted teeth and made up his mind. In the next moment, his face paled, while his body blurred in the space there. He was about to vanish. This was a secret technique for escaping that He Dao had grasped. As soon as he used the secret technique, his body would enter a state of being half fused with space. It would be difficult to injure him, almost making him invincible. All he needed to do was to wait for the secret technique to charge up. After that, he could directly cross a tremendous distance to escape. Even Grand Prime's 1 or 2 heavenly layers stronger than him would not be able to catch him. Clearly, He Dao understood the situation he was in. He knew he could not last very long against the martial soul lineage at all, so he chose to flee without any hesitation. If the Four Symbols Alliance is destroyed, I'll leave the Cloud Plain. If the Four Symbols Alliance manages to regain power after I leave, I'll just return, thought He Dao. You want to run so soon? Though, running away from members of our martial soul lineage is not an easy feat, Chu Jian sneered. His eyes immediately deepened. Powerful martial soul force condensed into a sharp sword and shot out from his forehead. It pierced through all defenses, stabbing towards He Dao's forehead with indescribable speed. Even if He Dao knew that Chu Jian had used a secret technique, it was useless. He could only watch the secret technique press towards him. He found no way to defend against it, much less dodge it. Immediately, an intense pain appeared from He Dao's forehead. He could not help but let out a pained grunt as his vision immediately blurred. How is that possible? My body has already half fused with space. I'm basically invincible, but why can't I avoid the martial soul force even now? What kind of power is martial soul force? How is it so powerful? He Dao was in great shock. The secret technique he was charging up to escape had been forcefully disrupted with that. At the same time, Chu Jian's sword suddenly stabbed into his head. He Dao died. Now, all 3 traitors of the Righteous Alliance were dead. That's far too terrifying. Zhou Zhidao witnessed the entire process leading up to He Dao's death. He was utterly shocked. He had clashed with He Dao many times, so he had gained quite an understanding of his strength. Even he was only able to reach a stalemate against He Dao at most, yet He Dao had been slain so quickly in the hands of the martial soul lineage. This had quite an impact on him. Did that not mean that if even he faced the martial soul lineage, he would not be able to endure a few clashes just like He Dao? That's terrifying. That's far too terrifying. Fortunately, the martial soul lineage suffers from natural restrictions, preventing them from breaking through to Grand Prime, or no one would be able to overwhelm them in the Saints' world. Zhou Zhidao's mind was in turmoil. He secretly swore that no matter what happened, he would not oppose the martial soul lineage in the future. Back to the Tianyuan clan on the southern region of the Cloud Plain. The provincial city had already been completely flattened. The towering city walls had already vanished. The city no longer bore any semblance to its past self. Only the Tianyuan clan enveloped within the second formation remained standing. A ball of blood-red light pulsed violently above the ruins of the provincial city. That was the prison that Lin Fei had created with a secret technique, which trapped Su Ran in the space there. Without Su Ran, the Tianyuan clan lacked any forces that could oppose the young Star Lord. As a result, the young Star Lord's people became completely fearless. They began to attack the formation without any worries at all. Even Lin Fei, who was responsible for protecting the young Star Lord, took part in the attacks. Under the attacks of so many experts, the formation around the Tianyuan clan trembled violently. It rapidly dimmed, and tiny cracks would constantly appear. Clearly, the formation had already reached its limit. Boom! At this moment, a powerful strike from Lin Fei landed heavily on the barrier. The terrifying attack from a 6th heavenly layer chaotic prime had finally pushed the formation past the point of destruction. All of its foundations exploded, and the final formation around the Tianyuan clan finally fell. Without the formation, everyone in the Tianyuan clan was directly exposed to the violent streams of energy. The powerful shockwaves in the air surged down like flood, as if they could swallow up everything. Everyone in the Tianyuan clan became ghastly pale as they witnessed this apocalyptic scene. Over half of them showed looks of despair. Chapter 2641. Hanging by a thread. The storms of energy were created when Lin Fei struck out. Even god kings could not endure such terrifying shockwaves. Moreover, not even 1/100th of the people in the clan had reached God King. In the face of this terrifying storm that could even claim the lives of god kings, the cultivators who were not even god kings would definitely die. Am I, the great newbies, just going to die here like this today? The golden-robed newbies stood on a roof as he stared at the storm of energy that was sweeping over. He refused to accept this. He had already reached peak God King. In particular, ever since he obtained the corpse of the old snake, his cultivation had rapidly approached the primordial realm by absorbing the essence of his clansmen. He would be able to break through and truly reach the primordial realm before long. Even his bloodline was evolving as he devoured the old snake. He was confident that he would definitely shine gloriously in the future and become a dominating expert. I, the great newbies, have only begun my path. I still haven't reached the end of my evolution. A smear of craziness appeared in Newbie's eyes, along with an intense reluctance to just accept all this. He was unwilling to simply die like this. He was unwilling to die before he reached the apex. At the same time, he was unwilling to become a stepping stone for others. Aren't you just chaotic primes? So what if you're chaotic primes? I'm not afraid of you. Madness filled Newbie's eyes. As he was about to face total annihilation, he did not wait for his death in dejection. Instead, he aroused a great fighting spirit hidden within his bloodline. He would rather die than yield. Even if he knew he would die, he would not just sit there and wait for it. He chose to burn all the potential his body had to offer and erupt with all his strength, using his feeble flame of life to explode with the most resplendent light and die in battle in a spectacular fashion. Just when Newbies erupted with this fearless mindset and was about to give up everything for one final battle, he seemed to awaken some sort of potential hidden deep within his bloodline. His unique blood as a silver-striped golden snake actually changed slightly. The change was very slight and very profound. Even Newbies himself failed to sense it. However, this change allowed Newbies' bloodline to inch forwards, making it even greater. In other words, his bloodline was evolving ever so slightly in this moment. The terrifying energy swept down like it could destroy everyone. Newbies could not help but return to his original form before the tremendous pressure. He became a small, golden snake several tens of thousand meters long. He was still a small snake because he was just too thin. He was tens of thousand meters long, but he was only as wide as a water tank. The width did not match up to the length at all. From afar, he seemed like a long, golden thread hovering in the air. A golden and silver stripe ran down his back along his entire body. The golden stripe had become him. It did not stand out much at all, as if it had fused with his golden scales. Only the silver stripe shone brightly. This was the symbol of golden-striped silver snakes. A short stub grew from Newbie's head. A profound pattern wrapped around it. Blue light seemed to flicker on it. Silver-striped golden snakes did not possess horns. Clearly, Newbies had deviated from the appearance that golden-striped silver snakes possessed. Suddenly, Newbies produced a hiss. His long body suddenly coiled up. Above the Tianyuan clan, he formed a shield from his body as his head charged into the sky like a sword, fearlessly rushing towards the energy shockwaves. However, the difference was far too great. Even when Newbies had already become a peak god king, even when Newbies' bloodline had evolved ever so slightly, he was still unable to make up for the colossal difference. Under the violent ripples of energy, Newbies' head first became riddled with cracks, oozing with golden blood. Afterwards, all of his golden scales shattered. His huge body became covered with countless wounds. Golden blood covered his entire body. Newbies let out a pained hiss. He used his body as a shield above the Tianyuan clan, bearing the brunt of the initial storm. He immediately became heavily injured, and his long body was almost ripped into pieces under the ravaging of the energy. Just as Newbies felt like he was about to be torn into pieces, the hurried sound of a zither suddenly rang out. Shangguan Moor sat in the air as the 36-stringed zither of the demonic cry was placed across her knees. Her slender fingers quickly danced across the strings, producing sound wave after sound wave. Her fingers had already been cut. Blood dyed the strings red, dripping onto the zither. Clearly, Shengwan Mu'er had already unleashed her full strength. However, even with her and newbies, it was still a futile struggle against the shockwaves of a chaotic prime's attacks. It was useless even with the third ancestor's legacy, even when she had grasped the two tunes of the demonic and divine. Spurt! Blood sprayed from Shengwan Mu'er's mouth, and she fell towards the ground like a broken kite. Her face was pale. However, at this moment, a gentle energy silently appeared around her, protecting her. A sliver of shock and doubt appeared in Shengwan Mu'er's eyes when she sensed the existence of this energy. She could clearly feel just how terrifying this energy was. Even when it was only a thin layer, it seemed indestructible in Shengwan Mu'er's eyes. It was as if even in a scenario where the world was destroyed and space collapsed, this thin layer of energy would still exist. Shengwan Mu'er suddenly looked at the depths of the Tianyuan clan. She could vaguely sense that the energy came from there. To her pity, the energy only protected her. Newbies and everyone else in the Tianyuan clan still faced the devastating storm. It was as if the mysterious expert only valued her out of the entire Tianyuan clan. Shengwan Mu'er opened her mouth. Just when she was about to ask the mysterious expert to save the Tianyuan clan, a huge, bronze shield suddenly flew down from outer space. It crossed through the air with unbelievable speed and appeared above the Tianyuan clan in an instant. An azure light fell from it and enveloped the entire clan. When the violent streams of energy collided with the azure barrier of light, the barrier immediately rippled and blocked the energy successfully. Yun Ziding and Su Qi rapidly descended. They gave off their powerful presences as chaotic primes, shooting through the air like comets towards the Tianyuan clan. Behind them, Bai Rufeng, Qing Shan, and Jian Chen all hurried towards the Tianyuan clan at varying speeds. Oh no, it's the martial soul lineage. They've actually returned. Lin Fei's expression immediately changed. He suddenly sensed an ill omen. Oh no, the people from the martial soul lineage have actually returned. Have the seniors from the desolate plain failed to kill them? We're in trouble now. Do we still destroy the Tianyuan clan or not? Should we retreat first? The hearts of the two chaotic primes beside the young Star Lords sank. They became extremely stern. However, before they could come up with a plan, Yun Ziding and Su Qi had already appeared before them. Yun Ziding wielded a bronze spear as his presence surged. He directly stabbed out, targeting Lin Fei. Soul-destroying technique. As he struck out, Yun Ziding immediately used a secret technique. Chapter 2642. Killing Lin Fei instantly. Even though Lin Fei was a sixth heavenly layer chaotic prime, he dared not be careless when he faced Yun Ziding, a fifth heavenly layer chaotic prime. Instead, he was stern. A two-handed sword suddenly appeared in his hands. As the energy within him erupted, the sword immediately shone brightly. It emitted a blazing white light as the supreme pressure of a sixth heavenly layer chaotic prime permeated the surroundings, causing the clouds and wind to churn. Lin Fei used his full strength right from the start, but as he swung out with his sword, a thunderous explosion suddenly rang out in his head. His soul had been silently impacted by a mysterious power, making him feel like it was being ripped apart. Even his vision plunged into darkness. The pain from his soul was enough to knock him unconscious, making Lin Fei lose his senses of the outside world. Spurt! It was also at this moment that Yun Ziding's bronze spear pierced through the protective energy around Lin Fei, continuing onwards until it impaled Lin Fei's head. Lin Fei, a sixth heavenly layer chaotic prime, had been killed by the first strike. Yun Ziding had instantly killed Lin Fei in an overwhelming manner. How is that possible? Lin Fei is actually dead. Above the Tianyuan clan, the other two chaotic primes from the Four Symbols Alliance blankly stared at Lin Fei, who had a spear in his head. Their faces were filled with disbelief. From when Yun Ziding appeared before Lin Fei to when Lin Fei died, it had basically been a split second. Lin Fei, who was a heavenly layer stronger than them, seemed so puny before Yun Ziding. They struggled to accept this. Even when they were mentally prepared, even when they understood that the battle prowess of the martial soul lineage was outstanding, even when they knew that martial soul force was strange and unfathomable, they had never imagined it to be this terrifying. At that moment, the two great elders were filled with fear. They could only stare at the dead Lin Fei blankly. They forgot to run. It was also at this moment that Su Qi arrived. She directly approached one of the great elders. Su Qi's cultivation was slightly weaker than Yun Ziding's. She was a third heavenly layer chaotic prime. However, she showed no fear against the two opponents who possessed greater cultivation than her. Immediately, rumbles filled the sky. Su Qi had already become embroiled in a battle against one of them. However, as her cultivation was 2 heavenly layers lower than his, it took Su Qi slightly longer than Yun Ziding. Run. Only now did the other great elder finally return to his senses. He lost all will to fight. His entire body shivered as he turned around to flee in complete fear. Yun Ziding suddenly appeared before him. His eyes were closed, and he looked at the great elder like he was a dead man. Yun Ziding did not waste any words on him and just stabbed out mercilessly with his bronze spear. The 3 chaotic primes that the young Star Lord had brought with him were not Yun Ziding and Su Qi's opponents at all. They were slain very quickly. The 3 chaotic primes were like the source of stability for the army. Their deaths directly toppled their morale. The expressions of the infinite primes who had attacked the Tianyuan clan first all changed drastically. They felt dazed. When the 3 chaotic primes died, it was like a bolt of lightning had just struck them. They could no longer be bothered with the Tianyuan clan anymore, immediately scattering and fleeing in fear. Afterwards, although the God Kings and cultivators below God King had no idea what had happened, they all sensed an ill omen when they saw their powerful elders flee. They all turned around to escape without any hesitation. At that moment, the many cultivators gathered around the Tianyuan clan. Cultivators who were ready to douse the clan with blood, all vanished. They fled for their lives in all directions. Although half of the God Kings among them were running away, they were filled with confusion and doubt. They had no idea what had happened that could scare the powerful elders like that. However, while they were filled with doubt, they were not slow. The fear on the faces of the elders had affected many of the cultivators below, so basically all of them used all the power that they had to run. Why would it be like this? Why would it be like this? A gray-robed old man hovered above the ruins of the provincial city. He did not flee like the other infinite primes. Instead, he hovered there gloomily. He was at a loss. The old man gave off the presence of an infinite prime. He was the ancestor of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Out of the 2 ancestors of the Heavenly Moon Empire, one of them had been personally slain by Su Ran. Now, only he remained. It's all over. It's all over. The Heavenly Moon Empire is done for. The old man became extremely dispirited. His eyes were filled with death and despair, along with deep regret. If our Heavenly Moon Empire abided to the Tianyuan clan obediently, we definitely would have experienced a glorious future. In the end, the 2 of us personally discarded that. I regret it. I am filled with regret, the old man lamented. Ancestor, don't stay here. Some God Kings from the Heavenly Moon Empire turned back and arrived beside the old man. They wanted to drag the old man away. The old man only waved his hand gently, and the God Kings were pushed away by a soft force. Go. Once you leave here, don't return to the Heavenly Moon Empire. You might be able to save yourselves like that. The old man stared into the distance at Yun Ziding and Su Qi as they worked on saving Su Ran. His eyes were gloomy. Now that this had all happened, he knew that he could not avoid death. Even the young Star Lord would not be able to change anything. Even if the young Star Lord treated him, a mere infinite prime, as a big deal, even if the young Star Lord wanted to save him, there was nothing that he could do. The martial soul lineage definitely would not respect the young Star Lord's wishes. At the same time, a powerful killing intent appeared in the sky. Jian Qin, Bai Ruffing, and Qing Shan descended. Before they had even touched the ground, Jian Qin noticed the state of the provincial city. He saw the Tianyuan clan that had its final formation destroyed, along with newbies who had reverted to his original form, covered in blood and hanging on by a thread. Jian Chen's eyes immediately became bloodshot as he emitted a cold, killing intent that caused the surrounding temperature to plummet. Kill! At the same time, a thunderous cry rang out. A large number of cultivators charged out from the Tianyuan clan. All of them were brimming with killing intent, hatred, and fury. They began to hunt down the cultivators from the Four Symbols Alliance and the Heavenly Moon Empire. Now that the tides had turned, the Tianyuan clan had gone from defending reactively to gaining the upper hand. They finally began their counterattack. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.